Good evening and salutations. Welcome to the first rough draft reading of my light novel One-on-One. I will be doing this in order to get feedback publicly from everybody. There will be a special message at the end, and I have chaptered this into sections, just in case you get lost. You can also use the comment section as a time note of me reading aloud so you don't lose your place. This will be very long, so you will not see my face. I will put up images of things, maybe even some background gameplay of something to keep your attention on the entirety of what's going on. To make things significantly easier for you, I believe I will put Dream Core gameplay going on to make things significantly easier, and the subtitles will definitely be wrong. So just wanted to let you know that, so don't worry about the subtitles. Put this on the second screen in the background. This is an incredibly long video, and I hope you enjoy. Have a lovely day or night wherever you're at, and please enjoy the beginning rough draft. Give me any notes you have. I will take them into consideration. But please remember, ultimately, this is my vision and my story. And I will be posting these on Tumblr. And I will be posting these on Wattpad. And I will find any other platform where I can post this entire 85-page beginning narrative section of my story. I please hope you enjoy, and I really do hope that you look into the story and tell me any writing mistakes I may have, and anything of that variety. Thank you so much, and I appreciate you. And I also would like to point out that I will have a very special message at the end of this, so if you want to see the special message, just skip to the end. I'm pretty sure I captured it. Have a lovely day. Enjoy. By the year 2030, the world's obsession with violence and victory culminated in the rise of the chain-link Cathedral, a sprawling coliseum of steel and screams. It was not simply an arena. It was sacred ground carved from rust and rebar, a monument to pain where the glory wasn't just promised, it was etched into the flesh of those bold enough to step inside. Here, blood wasn't shed for money alone. It was spilled for legacy, for transformation, for the chance to become myth. Each fight was a ritual. Each roar from the crowd was a hymn. Fighters entered to be broken or reborn, and in many cases both. By the time the bell rang, the cathedral had humble savage origins, hidden beneath the earth in derelict zones, behind crumbling chemical plants, and beneath collapsed overpasses. It began as a lawless pit for the damned and desperate. But violence, when focused, always attracts profit. The MMA Global Association and the World Boxing League found the place, watched a few matches, and saw something older than sport. They saw hunger not for victory, but for meaning. They cleaned nothing. They glamorized everything. Soon was once a secret war zone, turned into the most watched event on Earth. Streams crashed, pay-per-view, deals exploded, fans hijacked drones to get better views. And within months, the world wasn't just watching, it was worshiping. There are no true weight classes, no true shame-only stories, only pain. The cathedral promised glory to all who dared stand, but it made no promise of mercy. Fighters arrived missing limbs, with bones calcified into unnatural shapes and eyes glazed by too many concussions. It didn't matter. They still fought like possessed stinkers. Here, the greatest weapon was the refusal to fall. Styles ranged from Muay Thai to Krav Maga to drunken prison brawling. Some arrived with duct tape on their fists, others with bone spurs sewn into their elbows. All of it was legal the longer a bout dragged on. The more the crowd roared, hatred and resilience were both treated like holy scripture. The cathedral didn't just reward victory, it exalted suffering, and in that hallowed cathedral, pain was not a punishment. It was proof that you mattered, that you endured. The air reeked of blood and marrow. The floor was always slick, the light always too bright, but no one cared. Because to fall here was to be remembered, and to rise again even once was to become legend. The cathedral promised glory. And if you gave everything, even your humanity, it kept its word. We open in on a dimly lit room, glowing amber like a cheap whiskey. The shadows wrap around everything, except for the man seated at the desk, short in stature but unmistakably powerful, like a pit bull in a fur coat. His black glasses catch the low light, just enough to show a glimpse of calculation beneath. Thick sideburns hang like punctuation marks on a face that hasn't smiled in years, unless he's making a deal. He wears a bowler hat, far too round for the square shape of his head. A navy tee hanging loosely over a pair of denim overalls, half-buttoned for no reason other than aesthetic chaos. A thick, almost offensively expensive cigar smolders between two fingers as he leans back in a warm leather chair that groans under his weight. In one hand, a growl of golden brown waffle glistens with syrup. On the desk in front of him is a turkey sandwich, toasted just enough to crackle when bitten, with juicy slices of tomato slipping on the side, and a thin stream of mayo oozing from between the layers. It's vulgar, it's perfect. He speaks voice low and serpentine, curling like smoke from the end of his cigar. So it's settled, you want Alexander to fight Frank. Are you absolutely sure about that? On the other end of the phone, a booming theatrical voice responds like thunder, rolling across a battlefield. Well, I need the respect of the appeal before anything. Don't I? The man grins, lighting the waffle into the sandwich, with no hesitation, a culinary war crime in motion, and takes a loud, satisfied bite. Syrup leaks out the corner of his mouth. Like blood from a freshly split lip, he chuckles deep gravely, amused by both the sandwich and the desperation on the other line. All right. I got you, he says, chewing slowly. Can't have an undefeated champion if you can't be Frank. Huh, exactly, bellows the voice, practically shaking the speaker with his conviction. This is about honor. Demetri takes another bite, more deliberate this time, pausing only to tap ash into an overflowing tray, besides a dusty record player spinning silence. The fight's set for Tuesday. There's a beat of silence on the line, the kind that comes before a car crash. Tuesday as in next week, or... The voice is suddenly less thunder and more lightning. Sharp, startled, looking for something to strike. Nope, Demetri says, reaching calmly for a bottle of syrup and drizzling atop a still-open sandwich monstrosity. Tuesday as in tomorrow. There's a pause, then defiance of adrenaline-filled laughter. I mean, sure. You know what, Demetri? My guy is ready. Bring me Frank. The call ends with a beep that echoes too long. The silence that follows is thick, almost holy. Demetri leans back in his chair, the glow of his cigar pulsing, like a dying star, and whispers to no one in particular. Bring me Frank. Demetri, promoter trainer, fixer deal maker, is more than just the voice in the smoke. He is the voice behind the voice, the only man who has ever tamed, spoken for, and survived the beast that is Frank, the so-called hellhound of the chain-link Cathedral. Demetri exits his office and enters a realm that looks like godlike. In its stature, less like a home and more like the dream of a king. With too much money and too little shame. Towering stone spires stretch towards the sky outside. Inside lies a labyrinth, a state that marries decadence with absurdity. A castle-like structure, carved in ego and financed in violence. The walls are adorned with velvet drapes and golden-framed portraits, most of them of Frank mid-fight. Mid-scream, mid-blood splatter, the floor glistens like polished obsidian. A fountain stands in the center of the grand hall, its opulence blasphemous. A full-body scripture of Demetri himself, immortalized in bronze, lips puckered, water sprouting from his mouth, and raining down on a pile of sculpted copper coins. He mutters under his breath, not with anger, but with that distant exhaustion only certain men have earned, through years of herding lions. I hope he's in his room today. A maid in black and white lace uniform strolls past. Upright position, hairpin movements, robotic. Demetri calls out with familiarity. Hey, Rosie, is Frank in his room? She stops, turns mechanically, and locks eyes with him. Her expression is eerily blank. Not hostile, just entirely devoid of meaning. No, he went for a run. She says, voice flat. Then he mentioned he'd be eating with Anna. Demetri rubs his bald head, as if trying to wring out a thought. Despite not having a single follicle to assist him, okay. And, what exactly are they having for dinner? Rosie's head tilts slowly left. Slowly, right as though she's physically shaking. A dusty thought loose from the back of her skull, her fingers gently pressed to her temple, then her chin calculating. Excellent question, she says. Then with a dramatic flair that seems almost unnatural, on her usual lifeless face. She adds a stoop question, actually. She raises a single finger in the air, like she's summoning the gods of brunch memory, and declares, I remember. Demetri leans forward, eyes wide, well. Finally, for the first time in perhaps months, Rosie's face shifts, her cheeks soften. Her lips twitch into a serene imitation of someone else, clearly mimicking Frank. Her voice takes on a theatrical lit. Demetri knows where I like to eat. So if he asks, tell him my favorite place to get a midday morning, slightly brisk brunch Tuesday kind of meal. A deep, soul-splitting silence falls across the great hall, broken only by the sound of a butler, dusting the already spotless wings of the Demetri fountain. Demetri stares at her blankly, blinking like someone just poured static into his brain. What in the Samuel and Gomorrah fuck does that mean? What does that even mean, huh? He drops to his knees with theatrical flair, clutching his chest, as if struck by the sheer stupidity of it all. This kid is gonna be the death of me. We open on a stretch of sunlit highway, the kind that seems to shimmer under the weight of summer heat, where tires hum and engines roar, and yet, somehow all attention is locked on a barefoot figure, sprinting faster than the flow of traffic itself. They're tearing down the asphalt like a comet on two legs. Is a young, lighter-skinned man with a body carved of discipline and madness. It seems as though he's excited. He wears a loose button-up shirt, fluttering violently behind him, like the cape of some half-retired superhero, and long sweatpants that cling on his lean, muscular frame with each thundering stride. His bandana flapped behind him in wild rhythm, tethered chaos crowning the storm. His amber-toned eyes flicker like candlelight during an earthquake. There's peace in them, but also a trembling danger that never leaves. His hair is a mess not styled, not tame, just brutally honest. Like bedhead that never apologizes for being bedhead. His face glows with a distant, radiant, toothy smile, so pure it feels disarming. Almost holy, but the most noticeable part of him. The thing that people can't stop staring at is his one arm, extending from his left shoulder but containing 3 joints, like a segmented blade built for impossible torque. The stump on his right side is healed over, not with scar tissues, but seemingly with intent. He wears it like a badge of rebellion, a vow. As he runs with blinding speeds, we hear tires screeching, cameras clicking, and the labored breath of 4 separate film crews hanging out of cars shouting in the mics, trying desperately to keep up. They're documenting a ghost chasing a legend. Frank the man, known not just as a fighter, but as the very heartbeat of the chain-link Cathedral. And right now he's not in the ring. He's on the open road slapping windows of passing cars, like he's high-fiving the world itself. Each car he taps lets out a honk of delight. Children gasp in their booster seats. Mothers cheer, truckers raise fists, and everyone who locks eyes with Frank knows they've just seen something real. In a world that grows faker by the day, he doesn't just pass by traffic. No, he wakes it up. Then with a grin so wide, it looks like a crescent moon cracked open on his face. Frank bellows out to the sky. All right, that makes 20 laps. My body's earned the meal, and I get to share it with the most powerful girl I know. His voice is so loud it rattles treetops and sends a scatter of birds flapping into the air, like feathers from pillow fights. The earth feels it. The air carries it. The sky considers bowing in response. We cut to a whimsical, surreal moment just off the highway. A tiny squirrel, deep within the carved-out center of a tree, is watching a miniature television and brewing tiny squirrel coffee in a thimble-size ceramic mug. The rodent is wearing reading glasses. He's had a long morning, Just as the coffee finishes percolating, the thunderclap of Frank's Cielo reaches the tree, sending out a shockwave so powerful that the squirrel's dainty mug explodes. In the glittering fragments, coffee splatters across his tiny vest. He stares at the shattered cup in stunned silence. He sighs. He takes off his glasses, slowly wipes them on his tiny vest, and simply says again. Frank leaps from the highway onto the back of a moving pickup truck with the grace of a wild animal. Without breaking stride, he begins to car hop, bouncing across truck bed sedans and the roofs of rattling jeeps as civilians cheer and gasp from inside their vehicles, as if they're watching an Olympic sport no one trained for. And where is this one-armed legend headed? Nowhere less than his favorite place on Earth. The Soul Taco Dragon, the sign is unmistakable. A Chinese dragon, long and serpentine. It's wearing a sombrero too big for its head, using 2 fried chicken legs as maracas. Beneath it, a neon curse of glowing through flickering static. The tagline reads, "Fusion is the fusion of flavor." It's a hybrid of soul food, Mexican cuisine, and Asian comfort dishes. A restaurant that doesn't care for tradition. Only taste the streets it's on. It's torn and tired, cracked concrete. Boarded-up buildings and graffiti-layered walls line both sides of the block. It's not gentrified, it's not curated. It's real, the kind of plate that smells like deep, bright dreams and burnt hope, and still makes you feel like home. Inside, we see 3 men. The first, a ridiculously attractive Asian man with sharp cheekbones and glossy black hair. Looks like a K-pop idol who got tired of the stage and chose spice instead. The second, a massive black man with a dad-like aura. Bald head, full beard, and arms thicker than beer kegs. Radiates comfort and discipline all at once. And in the kitchen, wielding a cleaver like a samurai's final descendant, stands a broad-shouldered Mexican man whose immaculate hair looks like it was shaped by the gods of grooming. The bell above the door jingles politely as Frank enters. He opens his arms like a Shakespearean announcer, announcing his arrival, his entrance to a feast. Greetings and salutations. My beloved people, Before he can finish, a chicken wing breaded by crushed tortilla chips soars through the air and smacks him directly in the mouth, which he catches without blinking. Chewing joyfully, "You lost again." "I lost $20,000 on you," screams the K-pop level handsome man. Liu Bai, his kindness evaporated into a thunderous rage. His fist clenched, Frank tries to explain. "But Liu Bai, listen, Suddenly, he's lifted from behind in a surprise bear hug that turns into a devastating German suplex, crashing his skull into the tile floor. "I lost $50,000 on you," roars the dad-body black man. His love turned to fury. Frank, completely unfazed, rises with a dazed smile and says to himself, "Oh, a nice hug," before he can even regain his footing. A flying dropkick from across the room lands square in his chest, delivered by the furious Mexican chef who yells, "I lost $100,000. Frank doesn't flinch. Doesn't stagger, doesn't even stop smiling, with his teeth bleeding his shirt torn, and one of his eyes twitching from and back. He stands tall, beaming like he just got gifted a puppy. "Outstanding work. I can feel your hard work paying off. You guys are actually listening to my lessons." All 3 of them bruised in pride, rage bubbling in their guts, shout in unison the lessons of being a loser. Frank throws his head back and laughs with joy so sincere it confuses the laws of emotion. That's right, there's no greater joy than failure. A silence floods the restaurant like a heavy fog. 3 men look at each other, then back at Frank, and for a moment, in absolute synchronicity, they all think the same thing. What a weirdo! In the corner of the restaurant, nestled beneath a flickering neon light that hummed like a cicada at dusk, sat a woman whose presence demanded reverence, without ever raising her voice. She had a slightly downward-sloped nose, fair skin with a porcelain sheen, kissed by sun and scars, and narrow, fox-like eyes that darted like a predator's, watchful, calculating, always measuring. Her upper teeth were slightly pronounced, giving her resting expression an edge of intensity, as if she were perpetually biting down on a thought too dangerous to say aloud. Her hair was cut into a low pixie style, sharp at the edges, practical and defiant. A rejection of frills, her arms were lightly muscular, Not bulky, but toned like a statue, carved by someone who respected utility over vanity. She was androgynous in silhouette, a wide, powerful back and long, sinewy legs like a sprinter, but undeniably feminine in motion, a kind of elegant menace that made lesser men sit straighter in their chairs without knowing why. She wore short shorts and a plain black tank top, her biceps decorated with faint bruises, and wrapped tension. Her earrings, however, were ornate Aztec in design, made of beaten bronze with tiny jade inlays that simmered every time she tilted her head. Though she stood a full head shorter than the men around her, her authority filled the room like smoke. You could choke on it if you weren't careful. Liube Marcos Santos. She stood, she said flatly, barely looking up from her phone. It's been 15 minutes since I ordered the Cajun dumplings. The temperature in the restaurant dropped 5 degrees as the 3 men flinched simultaneously. Like schoolboys caught sneaking candy back in the back of class, their posture snapped upright, tension crackling in the air like wet wood and fire. Sorry, ma'am, they barked in trembling unison. Frank, who had been glowing with a cheer just moments before, approached slowly, his usual brightness dimmed to a gentle hue of reverence. There was a rare somberness to him now, like a dog realizing he's tracked Emma into the house. Anna, he said, soft and sincere, I'm so glad to see you. The Cajun dumplings, brilliant choice, really. I saw your fight last week, and you broke all of her metatarsals. That's gonna take a while to recover from. My favorite part, though, was when you landed that jab clean to her solar plexus. You can see the exact moment she lost control of her breathing. It was cathartic in 1493. Anna interrupted, standing now. Her shallow swallowed the floor between them. Her voice was dipped in acid. Frank blinked, huh? You've lost 1,492,93 times, Frank, she said, enunciating each syllable sharp and distinct. A pause. Frank's face lit up like a birthday cake. Yes, I did. Did you catch the latest one? And I didn't miss a beat. I don't watch losers. Frank didn't flinch, didn't frown. He stayed glued to his face like it had been carved. His smile stayed glued to his face like it had been carved into his skull. That makes sense? He nodded earnestly. Since you're the undefeated champion, Anna is the only woman in chain-link Cathedral history to remain completely undefeated. 993 consecutive wins, not a draw, not a loss, not a moment of hesitation. In a sport built entirely on violence and pain, she is known around the world as La Sombra Sagrada, the Sacred Shadow, a title whispered with either awe or envy, depending on who's bleeding. Her style is an unholy fusion of Muay Thai boxing, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Silam, and capoeira blended into a devastating dance of technique and brutality that she refers to El Puño Solar, the solar fist, because, as she puts it, I hit like noon. When she strikes, it is with the unrelenting glare of the sun, at its highest when there is no shadow to run and no shade to hide under. She sits back down, elbows on the table, voice calm, but charged with intent. You have to start winning, Frank. If you keep losing, you will be remembered as the world's biggest loser, and no one remembers losers. Frank doesn't flinch, his smile soft, even tender, like he's been told a beautiful lie. Yes, they do. Anna's tone sharpens. Who came second to you? Usain Bolt? The room falls silent. A sewing machine wheezes in the background. Somewhere a chair creaks under the weight of tension. What about Michael Phelps? Someone bears tell me. Who's the second richest man in the world? Frank doesn't answer. He's still smiling. But it's quieter now, like it's been folded inward. Not broken, but reflective. He looks at the table, then slowly raises his head to meet her gaze, his amber eyes calm and resolute. Then I'll be the world's greatest right-hand man, he says with reverence, before glancing down the side of his body, where a right arm should be. But isn't he, chuckles lightly and adds, or I guess the greatest left-hand man. Anna laughs heartily, and soon the restaurant is filled with a warm, chaotic harmony of laughter. Lube, Marcus, and Santos join in. their bellows echoing off the cracked walls and greasy tile, and Frank smiles with a calmer joy. The kind that comes from being seen even in ridicule, just as the laughter begins to taper off. Frank's phone rings, buzzing violently against the taco-smeared tabletop. He picks it up, still grinning. This is Frank. He doesn't even get to finish before a raspy, impatient voice explodes through the speaker. Yeah, no dingus. Where are you, Frank, unbothered? Replied with a serene tone. My favorite place to get a midday morning. Slightly brisk brunch Tuesday kind of meal. A beat of silence, then a furious bark. What the hell does that even mean? Demetri's voice practically short-circuited the line. Frank, looking at Anna, calmly responds, it means I'm on a date. Anna, without looking up from her plate, mutters dryly, not a date. Demetri doesn't even acknowledge her correction. You've got a fight tomorrow against Alexander. 9 p.m. sharp, you're the main event. Frank, with the emotional range of a man hearing, it's laundry day, replies, oh. Why can't we fight today, Demetri wheezes a laugh. Because not everyone's a superhuman, fighting hungry maniac like you are, right? Frank nods solemnly, then mumbles to himself. I am pretty hungry, Demetri sighs. I already set up the promotion. Arena sold out, you know. The usual spiel, make a meet you video. Stir up some drama, say you hate his guts or whatever. Get the public frothing, and just so you know, I'm taking all the money and Betty against me. Frank interrupts with a chuckle. Demetri cackles like a griffin lighting fireworks. You already know the deal, buddy. I'll see you at 8 p.m. tomorrow to drive you to the fight. Don't die before then, Frank. Overwhelmed with joy, smiles, slams his phone into the table with such force. It shatters into 3 clean pieces. I get to battle in the pit again. He shouts, sending a nearby tear toppling. I paused. He stares at the wreckage of his phone. He pats his pockets, realization draws. I use tap to pay. He turns to Anna sheepishly. Hey, Anna, can you cover my meal? Anna looks him directly in the eyes, blinking slowly. Were you born stupid? Or is this from all the blows to the head? Frank just laughs, and the rest of the evening is soaked in fried joy and peppered sarcasm. He's surrounded by the people he loves, warriors and misfits who to him are more than friends. They're family, and tomorrow he will fight. Not to win, not to prove anything. Just because he gets to we open on a gritty, no-nonsense boxing gym called the Freedom Pit. The air heavy with sweat leather and ambition. The camera pans to a monstrous man, an absolute colossus of flesh and fury, throwing rapid combinations into a weathered punching bag. His name is Alexander Knox, but to the world he's simply known as the Apex Patriot. Draped in blood-red gloves and matching shorts that scream, America versus everything. In blocky white font, he looks like a propaganda poster that stepped off the wall and decided to beat the hell out of reality itself. His chest is an iron slab, his jaw sculpted like Mount Rushmore, and his legs speak of years spent, turning sinew into steel. Every time his fists connect with the bag, the room echoes with a sickening thud, like thunder in a basement. And every other fighter in the gym turns instinctively, awed and slightly afraid from the far side of the room. A voice calls out rough, familiar like a radio DJ from the 90s, who smoked cigars soaked in bourbon. Hey, Alex. The man yells his cardboard already. His clipboard already in hand and stressed, dancing in his crow's feet. The weirdos over at Demetri's estate confirmed it. The fight's tomorrow. You good for that? Alex doesn't break focus. He stares at the punching bag for a heartbeat longer, then with the force of a wrecking ball dipped in liberty. He releases a punch so powerful, it lifts the 300-pound bag off his chain momentarily. It crashes back down with the sound of Judgment Day. The gym falls silent. He slowly turns, cracking a confident smirk that could sell 1 million American flags and silence an entire podcast. His bright blue eyes gleam with childlike wonder and primal joy. I finally get to meet you, Frank. He says, his voice smooth like gravel. His voice like smooth gravel, sincere and hungry. Been dreaming of this fight ever since I saw that lunatic laugh. Through a shin fracture. And then he thanked the guy who gave it to him. He throws his towel over his shoulder, still dripping sweat, and grabs a protein shake from a mini fridge tucked behind a wall of championship belts. Frank's not a fighter, Frank's a fire test. Alex mutters if you come out of that pit smiling. You either earned your soul, or you lost it in there with him. The clipboard man chuckles nervously. You're not nervous, he's what? Oh, in 1493 exactly? Alex says, shaking his head. Nobody loses that much without becoming the devil's favorite student. Tomorrow night I get to see what keeps him standing. And maybe, just maybe, I learned something about myself I didn't want to know. The gym fades to black as the screen cuts to a red blood title card. Chain link Cathedral Frank versus Alexander. The night. Frank wiped a smear of refried bean off his chin. With the edge of his sleeve, humming some chaotic tune that only someone with a shattered nose and a healed collarbone could hum with that much joy, he was sitting cross-legged on the floor of the wall, back pressed against the hole of unknown Norden, eyes full of gold, not metaphorically. Literally, tiny flecks of golden pigment swirled in his irises. Under the greasy light, he has 16 tacos in front of him. Across from him, Demetri stood awkwardly, arms folded. The greasy curls of his thinning hair were slicked back. His tacky fur coat, somehow simmering like oil in a puddle. He had his usual half-smirk, half-stare a face that said, I know I'm lying, but it's your fault if you believe me, you know, kid, Demetri said, rubbing his temples with two tobacco-stained fingers. I used to think I picked you up out of that dump, out of pity, like some sick little run I couldn't ignore. Frank bit into the taco eyes wide. But now Demetri took a long drag from his cigar and let the smoke curl in the air. I think maybe I needed you more than you needed me. Frank looked up, his mouth full of rice and emotion. That sounds like a compliment, but she said it like, you're about to put me in a headlock. Demetri laughed short, bitter but real. I taught you to lose, you idiot. Taught you that bleeding was a form of prayer. That falling down was just gravity's way of saying, try again. You know why? 'Cause that's all the world ever let me know. He sat down slowly across from Frank, letting his tired knees crack. My old man put a bullet in his head when I was barely a teenager. My mom died begging for help. From a government that pretended she didn't exist. I survived by stealing from people who deserve worse. You were just a broken little thing I found in the trash somehow. He turned to the guy who could make a crowd of 90,000 cry just by standing back up. Frank smiled and reached for another taco. You're getting soft on me. Old man Demetri shook his head, staring into the half-lit eyes of his only fighter. You're not a fighter, Frank. You're a sermon, your eulogy with fist. And tonight when you hit 1494, they'll all be watching, waiting. Not because they think you'll win, but because they need you to. Frank's the towering and awkward and beautiful, in a way that only the hopeless can be. And then I'll give them a resurrection. Demetri chuckled, flicked ash onto the floor, and muttered under his breath, God help the bastard who stands across you from the pit. The walls are cold concrete, gray sterile. We're in the Red Fighter's room. A faint hum of fluorescent light buzzes overhead, like an insect that's just daring you to snap. There's no music, no warmth, no cheering, just the sound of fists slamming in the pads, the sharp hiss of a needle, and the clink of a pill, bottle cap rolling across the tiled floor. Alexander the Patriot Knox sits shirtless on a steel bench, his physique an anatomy textbook. Soaked in adrenaline and anger, his skin is flushed, veins pulsing like there's gasoline behind it. He's got the kind of muscle that looks like it's hard to maintain, a walking sculpture of rage and discipline. Across his chest, an eagle tattoo with his wings spread wide. His fight short reads in bold, unapologetic letters as usual. America versus everything. He slams a syringe into his bicep, like he's done it 1,000 times before. Doesn't even flinch, pills clatter into his palm. Clenbuterol probably, or something worse. He swallows without water, just rage his trainer Brian. Mid-50s with cauliflower ears, and disappointment in his shoulders. Watches from the corner, arms folded. He knows better than to argue, but he tries anyway. Brian says maybe take it easy on the juice tonight. Champ, you get gas. And give this maniac his first win. They're gonna crucify you in the press. Alex turns to him, eyes wide with insult. Roid rage brewing like a storm behind blue irises. That looks like broken ice. He snarls, slamming his fist into the metal locker behind him. Leaves a dent, Alex says. I will not lose to the world's greatest loser. Brian retorts, I'm not saying you will. I'm saying you could. There's a difference. There's silence, a heavy, acidic silence. Brian slowly walks over and puts a hand on Alex's shoulders. A father trying to talk down a bomb. Look, kid, you're fast, strong. You got more knockouts than most fighters have fights. But Frank, he's not human. You know that, right? He doesn't fight to win, he fights to learn. That's basically it, and every person who's fought him. They left changed, broke scared, retired. Alex's lips curl. Good, maybe he'll finally learn what it feels like. To stay down. He walks towards the mirror and stares into it, like he's trying to intimidate his reflection, breathing hard, shoulders twitching. Somewhere beneath the confidence is a flicker of fear, barely visible, but there. Brian watches him sighs through his nose and mutters under his breath. Pride's a hell of a drug outside. The crowd is already screaming. The lights redeeming. The announcer's warming up his voice. The cathedral is ready, and in this locker room, a storm, is sharpening its teeth. Frank wasn't just another fighter. He was the purity test, the crucible. The gatekeeper to greatness. You didn't step into the cathedral and walk through Frank, you survived him. And you didn't, or you didn't, with a record of 0 wins and 1,493 losses. It would have been easy, almost logical, to dismiss him as a joke, but no one ever did. Not once, because to fight Frank was to enter a storm that doesn't end until the final bell. And even then, you might not leave whole. He has never been knocked out, never tapped, not once. Every single one of those losses by points deliberate. Calculated. Frank let you win so he could learn. So he could grow, so he could feel everything, and that made him terrifying. There was something almost inhuman about it. His body never seemed to break the way others did. He didn't limp, he didn't bruise for long, didn't waver even after bones were bent. Bent in the wrong direction, or blood ran like ink across his chest. He stood tall, cricket smile gleaming. Eyes wide and electric, ready for the next blow. Like it was a bedtime story being read just for him. It wasn't pain he endured. It was pain he invited. That mindset, that masochistic euphoria in the middle of chaos, earned him something far greater than a belt or a title. It earned him followers. They called themselves the losers. Millions of them, the janitors, the shut-ins, the bully kids, the single mothers, the warehouse workers, the weirdos, the ones who's been told, "You're not enough," so many times. They started to believe it. To them, Frank wasn't just a fighter. He was the last honest man. A broken, beautiful mirror for all of them to scream into. He lost and lost and lost. And still showed up, still smiled. Still thank you for hurting him. He turned failure into a religion, and they worshipped him for it. Because if you couldn't beat him, the man with one arm won 490 losses. And no ego. Then what gave you the right to fight the real gods? In the brutal theology of the chain-link cathedral, there was only one truth that mattered. You have to beat Frank. The most baffling, most backwards, most blood-free freezing thing about Frank wasn't that he lost 1,493 times. It was that he ruined every single man who beat him. Ruined them in ways no judge could score, no camera could catch, no post-fight interview could explain. He didn't need victories. Frank collected spirits with his single. mangled arm and that crooked smile, like a crescent moon carved by chaos itself. He battered bodies into mulch and fractured egos into fine powder. Some opponents left the ring unbroken. Others left humbled, but most never fought again, not because they couldn't, but because something about fighting Frank made them realize they shouldn't. He hit too hard, smiled too much, learned too fast. And when you gave him everything you had, your haymakers, your head kicks, your suplexes and submissions, he gave them back double. Triple with a grin that asked, "Is that all you got?" And when it was, he didn't even gloat, he just thanked you. That was the worst part. And yet there were some who survived. Not many a small elite. The chosen ones. They were called the 101st. The 101 fighters who faced Frank, and didn't just walk away, but walked away whole. Men and women who weathered the whole unholy storm, stared into the furnace of failure and kept fighting. The public loved them, respected them. Because surviving Frank wasn't about skill or strength or style, it was about soul. You beat Frank in points, but he beat you in spirit. And if you still had anything left in your spirit after that war, you were one of them. But let the numbers sit with you for a second. 101 out of 1494, that means 1393 fighters. Nearly every contender, every tramp, every upstart, every legend lost themselves, trying to beat the world's most beloved loser. And now the next one steps forward. Alexander rises from his bench, veins bulging, eyes lit like neon flares. Lunges slow and even like a man about to walk into a hurricane, just to prove he can outshout the wind. He doesn't smile, he doesn't shake. He just mutters like a prophecy or a dare to the universe itself. "I'm ready to face Frank." We see the arena. No, we feel it first. A low hum that rumbles through your sternum, like the heartbeat of some ancient beast walking through its slumber. The ground trembles faintly. The air thrums with the sound of collective anticipation, of violence dressed in Sunday best. They call it the pit, but calling it that feels like calling a tsunami a splash. The Chandelier Cathedral doesn't house fights. It summons them, it was Titan class, and that still felt like a whisper in a thunderstorm. You could fit a stadium inside this place and still have room for ego. The architecture was stitched from dreams and blood, money concrete bones, iron sinew, steel nerves, all wrapped in a million screaming voices. Everyone came, everyone. Roy Jones Jr., Mike Tyson, Conor McGregor, Ronda Rousey, Canelo, Lyle Alice. All those names etched in the annals of combat came not to fight but to watch. Because this place wasn't about fame, it was about myth. The cathedral halls were madness incarnate. Hundreds of vendors hawked everything, from knockoff merchandise to protein shakes mixed with whiskey. There were makeshift tattoo parlors doing live inkings of fighters' faces. There were gambling tables where men wept as they lost their life savings and then bet again anyway. And yes, there was even a daycare. A fully functional daycare. Bright and cheerful, nestled between a burrito stand and a weapons booth, because even bloodthirsty parents need someone to watch the kids while they cheer for carnage. Above it all, the screens loomed like floating gods, gigantic ultra-LED monstrosities, stitched into the sky like billboards of Olympus. The crowd didn't just see the fighters. They knew them intimate zooms into facial expressions. Cracked teeth and blood mist made every flinch feel personal. And the sponsors everywhere, Pizza Hut, Walmart, Apple, Sony, Bang, Energy, Arby's, Nike, even the United Nations had a logo somewhere. Everyone wanted a bite of the brawl. This wasn't just it was the world's new religion. And then there was the ring. If you could call it that, it was intimate, almost cruel in its simplicity. A hybridized, hell-forged fusion of a boxing ring and an MMA cage, octagonal like the UFC, but ring roped like an old-school prize fight. There was no canvas, no springy platform, no bounce, no give. The ground was concrete raw, gritty, unforgiving. They wanted fighters to feel every slam, every drop, every elbow against skull. You didn't stumble in this ring, you shattered the floor. bore the sacred scars of 1,000 titles, 1,000 battles, and 1,000 fights. Hairline fractures from body slams, faded blood, slayings from legends who bled too hard to be forgotten, and faint carving of carvings, of names etched in by trembling fingers right before their final fight. You didn't just step into the cathedral, you confessed to it, you offered it your body, like a lamb on the altar, and hope you were worthy enough to be remembered, because here, and this holy crucible of pain, you either become a god or you get eaten by one. And tonight the cathedral was hungry, and Frank was walking toward it smiling. There were 2 undercard bloodbaths before a main event, not just warm UPS, no. These were sacrificial flames, offerings to the altar of adrenaline. And tonight was no different. And the cathedral's steel and souls were fed to the pit, not for victory but for recognition, mostly to carve their names, however briefly, into the cement spectacle. The crowd was packed, rowdy, vibrating with a hungry sort of madness. Kids wore LED horns, booming with chain-link strong shirts, guzzled beer. TikTokers live-streamed themselves, streaming just for likes that air reeked of fried sugar, neon sweat, and old blood baked into the concrete. Everyone was rooting for Frank. Of course, he was the golden goose, the blessed loser, the class prophet. But they needed appetizers first, and these appetizers were strange. Ladies and gentlemen and bros, enthusiasts of all dimensions, are you ready to see some violence? The announcer, a former soap opera star with a voice like gasoline, howled into the mic. The crowd roared. In the red corner, hailing from suburban hell, with a heart full of badge-earned valor and thighs like industrial pistons, Rebecca Smith. She walked out slow and proud. Rebecca Smith, 5'10", 178 pounds, lean and wiry, with steel in her calves and concrete in her soul. Middle-aged but chiseled, every inch of her shaped by muscles and miles of morning runs and training sessions with the Scouts. Her hair was tied back with a married badge ribbon. Her boxing gloves, custom wrapped in carbon fiber plating, because she believed in consequences. The screens flashed old footage of her, teaching Scouts how to do jab, cross combos while selling Samoas. Her fan base was modest but devout, a little league of young girls, holding handmade signs reading KO for cookie, and married badge and murder. They even had a cookie booth in the vendor
selling
hall,
Thin Mints,
while waiting to watch their hero commit a felony with her fist, and then the lights turned vomit green. Static flashed across the arena. The air felt sickly, and in the blue corner, the King of Flame Wars, the Sultan of Ratio. The unfiltered, uncensored, unhinged. The pondering drama mama. Boom, instant jeering. Instant cheers, instant chaos. I'll stuff a monstrosity of manufactured masculinity. The pondering drama llama. He was 6'5" now. But thanks to experimental limb-lengthening surgery, everyone knew the truth. They knew him before the truth. His torso was still short, his proportions uncanny like a human stretch. Armstrong snapped in the place. 245 pounds of vanity enhanced. Brass knuckle-carrying beefcake, with fake platinum blonde hair, deep blue eye contact lenses, and tattoos that are red. No feelings, just facts. And blood is a punchline. Behind him came a swarm of online influencers. E-girls and llama merch. Beta males holding selfie sticks. Even a podcaster doing a live Q&A titled, "Do Women Even Deserve Left Hooks?" His crowd didn't chant his name. They screeched insults at Rebecca, hurling vulgarities emojis and QR codes to his Only Knox page. Hey, he said into a mic attached to a chest. Just want to say win or lose. I'm better than you, and that's what matters. Rebecca shook her head. She didn't care about his mouth. She was here to prove a point. That discipline beats chaos. That reality beats internet. That pain had a price. The crowd was already at a low rumble, popcorn flying like confetti, soda sticky fingers gripping plastic horns, the scent of bloodlust and nacho cheese, mixing into a sort of Colosseum fog. Everyone was waiting for Frank, Of course, the big event. The sacred clown, the final loser. But for now, they take violence in any form. All right, you savages! It's time for the first fight of the night. And I hope you like scout cookies and curved stunts, because we got both. The announcer roared into the mic. In the center of the pit, Rebecca Smith was already pacing, breath-controlled, body calm. She bowed to the crowd. Her still-wrapped gloves gleamed under the arena lights, and a few young scouts in uniform shrieked from the front row, like they just seen Wonder Woman made real. Go, Miss Smith. Do it for the cookies. She's gonna break his kneecaps. Across the ring, the pondering llama did a slow, mocking cartwheel. His 6'5" augmentation frame moved like a glitching NPC. His dyed blonde hair slicked into a lightning bolt, and his brass knuckles glinted on his chest. A GoPro and 3 sponsor patches. Vape Rhino, Hate Speech TV, and an Only Knox barcode tattooed onto his actual skin. Equal opportunity ass whoopins coming right up. He sneered, cracking his knuckles like bubble wrap. The bell rang and the chaos began. Round 1. Equal rights and lefts. Without hesitation, Rebecca exploded forward, launching a flurry of jabs, hooks, and body blows. Her movement was sharp, rhythmic, snapping like a metronome. 5 clean hits to the chest, 2 to the jaw. The drama llama backpedal. Momentarily stunned, the crowd gasped, and then he lashed out like a spring trap crack. A sidekick directly to her face. Oh, did you see that? She took it like a champ. Then came 7 quick hammer fists delivered with horrifying speed and precision. A combo that looked less like taekwondo and more like flailing, and then the line. Women deserve equal rights and left. The drama llama howled to a mix of laughter and disgust. He launched a flying elbow, which Rebecca barely dodged. The scouts in the stands gasped. One of them dropped her cookie tray. "He's so evil," whispered a young girl in horror. The announcer bellowed, "Well, folks, I hope you wore your seatbelts, because this fight just took a turn off the highway of decency and landed in cancel country." Round 1 was over. Rebecca staggered to her corner, breathing hard, blood trickling from her nose. Left eye red, her face was calm but stern. A timid scout leader leaned in with an earpiece and tablet. Miss Smith, ma'am. I think he's using enhanced contact lenses, motion precision tech. Also, I'm sure one of his Twitch mods is piloting his movements from a van somewhere." "Good," Rebecca said, her voice low, calm. "Then I'm fighting 2 cowards instead of 1. The bell rang again, but this time Rebecca didn't change. She waited, stalked. Every punch she threw was a question, and every answer was a rehearsal. The drama llama started twitching, his movements stuttering, losing flow. He tried a side jab. She ducked and delivered a counter straight to his ribs. He tried a roundhouse. She pivoted on a dime and caught his ankle midair, slamming his leg downward like a folding chair crack. The crowd screamed. He tried to recover, but she was a whirlwind, a jab to the liver. An uppercut to the chin, a left hook that shattered his balance. Her footwork was unreal, powered by legs forged in years of tire flipping. And half-marathon scouts rule. Scouts rule, punch him in the feminism. Then the llama cheated. He flicked something from his pocket acid. A misty spray of pain right into her eyes. Rebecca screamed, stumbling, covering her face. Did he just spray acid? Oh my God, disqualify him. Someone call OSHA. She staggered, but she didn't stop her fist. We're blind now, but her legs remembered everything she felt to move. Listened to his panicked breath. And then she struck 3 punches to the chest. 1 straight to the jaw, and then she did a spinning back fist that caved in his nose like wet cardboard. Ah! She's blind and still beating his ass. He went down, the bell rang, and Rebecca collapsed to one knee. One eye swollen shut and the other sealed in pain. We see a beaten and blood-covered llama in a worse condition. Results: Rebecca Smith, winner by KO round 2. The arena erupted a thunderous standing ovation. Popcorn and soda flying, little girls shrieking with joy. And the pondering llama drama. The pondering drama llama's twist. Chat imploding in real time. You lost to a girl, you lost to a scout mom. Fatal L unfollowed. Meanwhile, from the fighter's waiting room, Frank sat on a beanbag chair watching the carnage with a taco in one hand and a childlike sparkle in his eye. Whoa! I love her energy, she's so cool. He whispered to no one, bouncing in place. I want to be like her when I grow up, he added half to Demetri. Rebecca was swarmed by dozens of sponsors instantly. Fitness drinks, herbal ointments, scalp-themed protein bars. She was dizzy from it all. Not just from the fight, but from the overwhelming rush of validation and attention. We'd like to offer you a brand deal with the Crunch Kick. How do you feel about launching your own boxing doll? Would you like to appear on Dancing with the Fighters? She raised a hand with her bloody face and smiled. Calm as ever, I'm just happy. The girls got to see what strength looks like, she said, proud. Even if I lost a little vision doing it. In the vast turning madness of the chain-link cathedral, intermissions weren't just bathroom breaks. They were sacred commercial bloodlettings. 20 minutes carved clean between violence. Long enough for your soul to wander off. Lose their rent check on a bad bet. Get married in the chapel of loss. Or just cry softly in the shadow of a stall door. While I have the tiger played somewhere above the universe, you've got 20 minutes. Freaks P. Gamble. Inject yourself a horse DNA. Whatever your vice, now's the time. The arena dims slightly, the lights switching from adrenaline white to neon pink, signaling the shift in tone. Across the gambling pits, holographic dealers smiled with predatory, glitching teeth, while the vendors shouted over one another. Get your deep-fried energy bars. Who needs steroid-infused shots? BOGO for round 3. Pre-broken collarbones for the cosplayers. Stay authentic, baby. But tucked behind all this chaos was a shining monument to modern hypocrisy. The Cathedral Trauma Pavilion, a glistening on-site hospital fully equipped with the world's most advanced rapid repair technology. Born from a history soaked in violence, war profiteers, and biotech firms had combined their powers, not to heal humanity, no, but to ensure the show never stopped. Nano skin patches can mend fractures in less than 72 hours. Eyeball regrowth injections were stored in the fridges, like Pudding Pop's Rebecca's eye. Damaged by chemical burns, had already been cleaned, numbed, and restored. With artificial tears coded to her DNA. The pain was gone, the memory too, but the fire in her chest still burned after her match. Rebecca was sitting quietly near a vending machine, sipping electrolyte soup with one leg propped up, still catching her breath, not from exhaustion, of course, but from overwhelming vindication. Scouts buzzed around her, hugging her calves, filming TikToks, giving each other patch ideas. That's when Frank arrived. He moved through the hallway with a spirit of friendly violence, humming a lullaby and holding a double bag full of literal Monopoly money. The crowd parted for him like a tide, made of stunned interns and broken nose fighters. Frank approached the scouts first. "Hello, tiny warriors," he said in a gentle, whimsical tone, crouching with the flexibility of a broken accordion. "Do you have any thin mints?" "Yes, sir. We take credit crypto and blood oaths." Frank held up a wad of bandaged cash. Handed over enough to bankrupt the regional council, and walked away with 100 boxes balanced in his arm. He walked over to Rebecca, placing them beside her softly. "Like an offering you find lovely," he said, beaming. Wearing his hoodie that said, "I lose so you don't have to." What this hoodie said: "I learned a few lessons from you. Your breathing was magnificent, and under pressure you didn't buckle. You shimmered." Rebecca blinked, still adjusting to her fresh biotech growth eye. She gave a slow nod, as if awaiting whether this was mockery. It wasn't. Frank didn't know how to mock. It seemed sincere. "I just wanted to show the girls that they don't have to. Sit down and be safe," she said, cracking her knuckles. "They can throw chairs too." You didn't just show them that." Frank said, "You made the boys scared. That's real. That's the real strength." They talked for a while, a long while. Then they spoke about the difference between pain and fear, about the strangeness of fame, and how cookies are a currency of hope. A little scout sat at Frank's feet, asking if he thought losing was good. "Losing is good," Frank said. "But learning is better. I lose to learn." "If you lose just to lose, that's not failure, that's quitting." Elsewhere, in a janitor closet turned makeshift dressing room, the pondering drama llama was fuming, pacing live, streaming into a camera mounted on a bruised ring light. "Chat, listen. Of course I lost on purpose. It was an act of, the feminist solidarity, like, I let her break my legs, that was the bit W type, a few loyal chatters based L. Another wrote you got hog, bro. Came the reply. He looked down at his twisted leg brace, his crutches the expired contacts, tossing the trash and back to his chat. 5,000 viewers dropping fast. This was all part of my plan. I'm a performance artist. I prefer humility. For the women, yo. Shut up, L-man. A voice off camera said his own mod left the room. The scouts had started a meme campaign mocking him, featuring Photoshop edits of him, getting beat up by various historical women. He was trending for the wrong reasons, but he clung to it. This is what growth looks like, he said, wiping away a tear with a protein wrap. It hurts. Back in the waiting room, Frank tossed a thin mint in the end of the air, caught it with his mouth and spun in a full circle, like a child on too much fruit punch. Demetri walked in. You just bought 100 boxes of cookies. Yes, Frank said, chewing. They're my new pre-fight fuel. You realize your blood sugar is all best, buddy? Don't worry, I'm sweet enough already. He kicked his legs over the back of a couch and started watching old recordings of himself getting punched in the face, fast-forwarding to his favorite parts. See round 3 of Fight 1008. This guy hit me so hard, I forget how to speak French for a week. Classic, then the mission was over. Outside, the crowd was screaming. Screens flashing ads for future fights. Social media feeds flooding with hashtags like Scout, Mastered, and Llama Down. Inside the heart of it all, Frank was smiling. It was if the first fight was as a chaotic firecracker, then the next was a slow-burning war. A family wound turned blood sport. A brotherhood carved in broken collarbones and bruised egos. The announcer knew that this was what this was, and so did the crowd, ladies and gentlemen. This was not just a match. This is history. This is resentment made flesh. This is the final battle of the Kemp brothers. The arena dimmed for a dramatic effect, and on the Jumbotron highlight reels played 2 young boys in black and white, sparring in modest backyard. In a modest backyard dojo, then cutting to violently, gloriously lit shots of them beating the hell out of each other in past fights, bloodied and breathless, yet always hugging afterwards, at least until recently. They were born minutes apart, sons of a single mother who raised them with no TV, no junk food, only discipline and tradition. Harold Kemp, the albino twin, always sensitive to sunlight, trained in indoor gyms his whole life. He became a master of Muay Thai, obsessed with precision striking and using his elbows like razors and knees like battering rams. He was 6 feet tall and weighed 195 pounds, and always carried a black parasol into the ring. To him, fighting was a science, a system, a ballet of brutality. His brother, Sylvester Camp, born with melanism, had the opposite life, always in the sun, shirtless in the dirt. Wrestling neighborhood kids, training and catch wrestling, jiu-jitsu judo. Anything that involved grabbing and twisting, he saw grappling as the most intimate expression of conflict. He was slightly heavier at 202 pounds, the same height and stronger by nature, but slower on the wind up to him. Every hold was a conversation. Every choke was a poem. They were a famous duo in the early Cathedral days, putting on dazzling expeditions, where they fought each other half-seriously, smiling for the crowd. But then came Anna. Anna, the prodigy Anna, the Shadow Queen Anna, who never once looked at either of them like they wanted, and in that rejection they made each other enemies. In the red corner, the Shade. In the sun, the pale devil of the high kick. Harrow, the Bleach Reaper, camped. Harold emerged under a custom-made reflective canopy, flanked by 2 assistants holding umbrellas. His body was wrapped in a light mesh rash guard, almost glimmering. He tossed his umbrella into the crowd. Like a wedding bouquet, the fans screamed. A few fainted when it hit them. And in the blue corner, the ink stain. Bonebreaker, the Nightshade. Suplex artist Sylvester. The Dark Vice Kempt. Sylvester came out shirtless, dragging a wooden dummy, with Harold's face stapled to it behind him. He looked calm, but his eyes twitched, betraying the ocean underneath. Both brothers stood in the ring. No words, just stare. The crowd leaned in, holding their collective breath. The bell rings, but for a full 2 minutes. No one moves Harold and Sylvester Kempt. 2 sides of the same coin. polished and raged and scuffed by delusion, simply stand and stare the ring. Despite the crowd's screams, became silent in its own dimension. As if the chain-link cage had formed a vacuum, a hollow where ego meets fate. They mirror each other's breath, each nostril flare a metronome, each twitch a seismic whisper. Their pupils contract, their shoulders tighten. And then boom, like someone flipped the switch. On an ancient machine of war, they move at once, a blinding symphony of fist and bone. Every strike is a sentence, every parry a bitter reply. Sebastian throws a looping left hook. Harold ducks hot answers with an elbow to the side. Sylvester catches it and sweeps the standing leg. Harold rolls mid-air and lands on his feet. Huh? You've been practicing for her. Blow after blow, their fists blur. Arms windmill and stop on a dime. Elbows grind into the clinches. Knees snap like drums against their ribs. But nothing lands, every motion countered. Every plan pre-read, and then, without warning, they both erupt into wild, manic laughter. Ha ha ha. She will be mine, their bloodlust. Just arms for just a breath. And the audience is confused, howling like wolves starved not comedy, blood, but to the brothers. It's Holy Anna, meanwhile, watches from the other mezzanine. Hood up disguised in a fake mustache. Sunglasses over sunglasses. Her eyes rolled so hard they could almost dislocate. Idiots, she mutters. Truly embarrassing morons. With seconds left, the brothers reignite the temple. Harold attempts a flying knee, only for Sylvester to catch it mid-air, transitioning into a standing guillotine. But Harold hand fights. The grip slips free and throws a devastating liver shot. Pause. Sylvester winces for just a fraction of a second. And in that space, you could feel the entire cathedral tighten. It's in the flutter of a hawk. Moth circling the rafters. Oh my goodness! And the grip of a sweaty popcorn bag. And the tense hands of Frank, pressing against the screen in a locker room. But Sylvester doesn't fall. He grins, Harold grins back. The bell rings, the scorecard flashes. A perfect tie in their corners. They don't listen to their coaches. They don't ice their walls. They don't even hydrate, they just mumble Anna. Like monk chant mantras over and over. Anna, 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 Anna. It's becoming real ritualistic. A holy word to them, a reason to exist. And Anna burying her face into a pro in a program. Flyer wants nothing more than to vanish. If they say my name one more time, she growls, I'm gonna vomit. The bell rings again this time. There is no hesitation. The second round begins not with skill, but with pure unhindered chaos. Harold charges, Sylvester tackles. They roll like animals gnashing, tearing no guards. No structure, every elbow a sledgehammer. Every takedown an earthquake. At one point, Harold lands a spinning back fist. And Sylvester retaliates by biting his shoulder. Biting. The announcer screams, "What is this?" Kindergarten MMA. And then it happens. They grab each other by the back of the head and just start punching over and over and over and over. Oh my God! Bare knuckle forehead to forehead. Unblinking madness. They became mirror cavemen, trapped in a feedback loop of hatred and heartbreak. The crowd can barely process it. They're half horrified, half hypnotized. One child in a stand begins to cry. They've forgotten their training, yells a former coach in the third row. They revert to instinct. Even Frank in the locker room puts his thin mints down. What in the Looney Tune hell is this? Their fists are pulp. Their noses bleed like split cherries, and neither stops for 2 whole minutes. They pummel each other without defense, just groaning and sweating and smiling like lunatics, and then collapse. Simultaneous like synchronized swan dives. They fall locked together, still gripping the back of each other's heads, like lovers frozen in a moment of shared madness. The referee, unsure what to do, starts to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Sign 10. Double knockout. The crowd is silent for a full 5 seconds. And then erupts in a right rumpus. Just amazing applause. Disbelief in a matic chanting dummies. Dummies, dummies. One fan holds a sign that says Anna deserves better. Another simply reads, brotherly brain damage worth it. Up in her seat, Anna sighs. Well, maybe they knocked me out of their minds. Backstage, Frank sits blinking, still processing the spectacle. They think they get Anna before me. He scratches his head. Are they okay in the brain? The moment the double knockout was declared, a collective breath swept across the Chinley Cathedral. It was as if the entire arena, with all this noise and neon and memory, had just been a prelude to something far greater. A prologue to a legend's next session. And now it was time. Main event begins in 5 minutes. The speaker blared, but they didn't need to. The vendors abandoned their stands mid-sale, hot dogs rolling out of trays. Even the most stubborn gamblers in the den, the ones hunched over tablets, doing furious mental math over odds, and parlays froze mid-bet, transfixed by the flickering television screens. In the luxury skyboxes, influencers, CEOs, retired fighters, and washed-up musicians turned away from the champagne and scandals to press their forehead against the glass, desperate to witness history. In the daycare where children normally shrink, toss phone blocks, every toddler sat mesmerized, wide-eyed faces sticky with juice and wonder. One little girl held up a tablet and whispered, "That's my loser, ladies and gentlemen." Oh, it's finally time for the undefeated loser. Huh. They didn't even say his name yet. They didn't have to across the cathedral. The champ began to rise like a tsunami. That's my loser, that's my loser. That's my loser. The vibrations shook the walls. Entire seating sections pulsed with unity. It wasn't a chance anymore. It was ritual, it was mass. Smoke machines exhaled slowly from the corridors, like the cathedral itself was taking a long, nervous inhale. Spotlights whipped in circles, spiraling across the map, each one desperate to catch a glimpse of the silhouette that had not yet appeared. The ground staff cleared the ring with reverence. Wiping sweat and blood away, the map was now a blank page, a final stage, the holy text of combat, awaiting its most pro-poetic chapter. Around the globe, live streams spike. Screens lit up, light up bedrooms, basements, bars, prisons, bunkers. From high-rise penthouses in Tokyo to refuge tents and war-torn valleys. People lean in, some with popcorn, some with tears, some with broken bones, praying Frank breaks the world next. He's gonna do something insane tonight. No, he's gonna lose, like always, but maybe this is the loss that wins everything. The lights dim, the crowd hushes. Some fans close their eyes, others grab hands, and some simply place their palms over their chests, as if Frank himself were a national anthem. The screens go black. One voice comes through the speakers. You ever lose so beautifully? They call it art, and then from the tunnel, a footstep. The cathedral lights cut, not dimmed, but devoured as it swallowed by the collective breath of a world holding still. One spotlight burns down like God's flashlight onto the mouth of the tunnel. And there, without fanfare, without fear, Frank appears. He is grinning not with arrogance, but with a kind of joy reserved for men who have died 1,000 small deaths and smiled through each one. His hair is untamed, lion-like, winded by the madness of his legend, shimmering with the oil of devotion and the dust of 493 battlefields. His shorts are the color of faded war flags, stitched with cracked golden letters say L.A. Vi. Such is life, he carries no robes. No entourage, no bravado, just his bare chest, scarless and shimmering. His mouth guard swinging from 2 fingers, like a broken charm, and his hand wrapped tight in the same old cloth he used on his loss number 1. At his side, Demetri walks low. Not hunched, not burdened, but watchful. He wears his usual Mitch-Max suit. Tie half-tied hair slicked back but crooked, like a man watching a sunrise. He's not sure it's a blessing or an omen, and he doesn't say a word, because this now is Frank's moment. His boy, his thunderstorm. His legend, the moment Frank's foot touches the ground. It's not sound that erupts. It's something older, primal, religious, ancient. That's my loser, that's my loser. Like cavemen around the fire, they do not cheer his skill, they chant his soul. And entire rows of grown men are crying. Mothers are lifting their babies over their heads. Fists are slamming into chest like ritual drums. Even the children in the daycare, watching for their beanbags, juicebox clutches, and chanting with tiny tremble voices. That's my loser, that's my goddamn loser. And Frank, he raises one fist. One single tired, taped-up fist, and somehow, and possibly the moment his mouth opens. His voice roars over all of them. Who wants to see violence? The Cathedral responds. Like it's been stabbed in the heart, yes, yes, yes. Yes, 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 yes. They don't know what kind. They don't care. They just know that something brutal and beautiful is about to happen on the other side of the arena. Alexander Knox's world unfolds, like a Las Vegas nightmare of patriotism and testosterone. His entrance is longer, glitzier, accompanied by death metal and fireworks in a 5-minute montage of his past knockouts. They play across the jumbotrons. Behind him are trainers, media personalities, a few Hollywood action stars, and some brand sponsors in full costume. One influencer shouts, "Kill the loser, Alex. Do it for freedom," another screams, "Beat him within an inch of his freaking life." There are banners, flags, and holographic eagles flying across the screen. The anthem, a slow, guttural deathcore remix of the Star-Spangled Banner, blares like a funeral of subtlety. Alex raises his arms, not smiling, not angry, just tense. He isn't worried about winning. He's worried about what it will cost his body. To survive, he's just a loser. One of his coaches says, "Yeah." Alex mutters, not believing a single word. That's what terrifies me, the announcer voice. The announcer's voice booms across the cathedral like a god with a microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Chain-Link Cathedral." The lights explode to life, scanning the vastness of the dome, the crowd riding like a single living being, a beast of 100,000 throats. Screaming for war, fireworks blast into the dome's upper latticework, raining sparks like falling comets as the announcer continues. In this corner, standing at 6'3", 232 pounds of red, white, and blood, the undefeated heavyweight, with 99 victories and no losses, the proud son of Stars and Stripes, Alexander. America versus everything. Knox, the apex patriot. The crowd on his side loses their minds. The screen shows slow-mo highlights. Alexander, knocking a man's mouthpiece into the front row, breaking ribs through a bloody shield, roaring as he pounds the mat with blood on his face. But none of that compares to what comes next, and this corner, standing at 5'10", 168 pounds of pure failure. The man with one arm and 2,000 scars. The unbroken, the smiling storm. The hellhound of the Chain-Link Cathedral. Oh my God! The sound that erupts is deafening. Fans cry, grown men fall to their knees. One man proposes to his girlfriend, mid-chant of "That's my loser," and she says yes before collapsing in the tears. A baby throws a chicken nugget at the screen. Frank stands in the corner, staring at Alexander with eyes like rusted sunlight, calm, grinning. He doesn't bounce, he doesn't warm up. He simply is existing like a ghost, waiting to make his presence known through violence. Across from him, Alexander breathes, like a locomotive. Of blood is already dancing in his pupils. He points one glove at Frank. "I'm going to end you," he says. "I'm going to bury you," Frank smiles wider. "Man, I hope so," he replies softly. The ref calls for them both to the center. This is a 5-round no-hold-bars. Points optional exhibition. The Cathedral rules applies. There are no rules knockout, submission, or until one of you dies of happiness. Are we clear? Alexander nods. Crack neck, roided grin. Frank, just whispers, crystal. The bell rings and Frank doesn't move. Alexander lunges a storm of red gloves. He throws a left hook like a meteor, right hook like a shotgun. Frank ducks both, not with speed, with sincerity like he knew they were coming. He parries the next jab with his forearm stump and steps in, boom. A headbutt to Alexander's nose. The crowd gasped. Alexander stumbles. Already bleeding, Demetri's watching from the sidelines, with a coffee in his hand and his feet on a folding chair, just mutters, Frank's dancing again. Alexander tries to compose himself, but Frank is inside, not throwing fist-talking. You think pain is something to be feared, Frank whispers through gritted teeth as he blocks another jab with his shoulder. But I've had dinner with pain. She's lovely, a little bitter. Alexander swings wild. Frank sidesteps and lands a devastating uppercut with his shoulder, not fist. Just raw body, the crowd erupts. Some scream, some sob, and Demetri just smiles. Welcome to the Cathedral, kid, he says to no one. This is where gods come to learn how to bleed. He doesn't block, he doesn't resist, he just smiles wider and lets it happen. Alexander unloads a flurry. A textbook perfect combination. 2 jabs to the temple, a body shot to shift balance. Spinning back, fist that connects square with Frank's jaw. The crowd roars, trainers watching him from the back room gas. A camera zooms in on Frank. Mouths Frank's mouth as the land blows. He's smiling, blood on his teeth. Grin getting bigger, he's eating it? Someone in the audience whispers in horror. He's eating it hits. Alexander growls, not frustrated. Why won't you drop, boom? Overhead, right hand straight to the bridge of Frank's nose. Blood burst out like fireworks. Frank staggers back 3 steps. Wipes his nose with his single arm. Looks at the blood, licks it. It's got protein. He chuckles. The ref doesn't interfere. Not here, not in the Chain League Cathedral. This is the Church of Carnage. And Frank is his devoted disciple. Alexander sees red, unleashes everything. He begins hammering Frank 10, 15, 20 punches in a row. But body head but body. Left, right, elbow, knee. A spinning back kick. An axe that lands directly on Frank's collarbone. The sickening sound of ligament tension echoes. Frank drops to his knee, the crowd silences. Demetri stands. Alexander raises the fist. Stay down, and then Frank deliberately stands back up. That same serene madness in his eyes. I'm sorry, Frank says gently. Like he's consoling his child. I was distracted, your rhythm is improving. Alexander's eyes twitches. Frank doesn't counter, doesn't strike back. Instead, he leans forward, his face inches from Alexander's, and whispers, let's see how far you go. You're willing to go to win. Alexander snaps, begins raining blows. Faster this time, angrier, now sloppier. Wild, emotional, and Frank just moves his head slightly, letting the punches scrape past his cheek, graze his ear, thump against his forehead. Like hail on concrete, he absorbs them like a sponge built on vengeance. Thud across to the temple, whack. A knee to the stomach, wham. A rising elbow to the chin. Frank goes limp against the ropes. The crowd gasped. Is it over? No, Frank bounces right back into action. Like a puppet on caffeine, grinning like a madman, and then the bell rings. Ding, ding, ding. Round 1 is over. Alexander is heaving. Lungs screaming, sweat pouring like he sprinted through hell. His gloves are stained with blood, his own knuckles raw from the battering. Frank walks back to his corner without a limp. No bruising visible, no signs of trauma. Just a crimson smile, and a small nosebleed trailing down his lip, tasting like wine from heaven. He sits on a stool, the only stool in his corner, as Demetri hands him a juice box. You drink that slow now, Demetri says. Lighting a cigar wouldn't want you cramping up from the devastating onslaught you just suffered. Frank chuckles, juice box. Straw between his lips, he's good. Heavy hands, good balance. Terrible breath, though they both laugh. Meanwhile, Alexander is slumped in his corner, wide-eyed, confused. I hit him with everything, he mutters to his trainer. Brian leans in, voice grim. Yeah? You did, and he's just getting started. Round 2, the bell rings. Alexander storms out of his corner like a gladiator shot from a cannon. Veins bulging, lungs burning, his knuckles still trembling from the fury he poured into the last round. His breath is heavy now, not from fatigue, but from confusion. He had hit Frank with his Sunday punch, his Monday curse, his Wednesday wrath, and yet the man stood smiling, always smiling, Frank. Frank walks forward slowly. Without his guard, raised his left hand. His only hand swings freely, like a rope in the wind. His mouth guard is in now. His eyes calm, serene, amber and unreadable like still water before a tsunami. Demetri, arms folded in the corner, muttered to himself, "All right, boy. Let's see what you learned." Alexander charges, fires a body hook, then a looping right, a stomp kick. He tries to trap Frank in the corner and end it. But now Frank moves not like a man. Like silk, like he's holding on. He's folding into the fabric of Alexander's attacks and coming out uncreased on the other side. Each strike sails by him by inches, not because he's fast, but because he's loose limp. Floating like a baby rolling downstairs without getting hurt. The bones don't lock, the muscles don't resist. His body is yielding, shifting just enough to bleed from the power. From every punch, the first counter is barely a touch. A slap Frank slaps Alexander's exposed bicep. As he throws an overhand, not hard, not painful, but deliberate, Alexander snarls. "What the hell was that?" Frank says nothing. He smiles again, next combo jab. Jab cross from Alexander. Frank dips under the cross and taps him on the hip with his knuckles again. Not damage, just presence. It's not fighting, it's teasing. A low kick comes next. Alexander's shin rips towards Frank's, through the thigh like a guillotine. Frank raises his head and shifts just slightly. The kick slims past. Frank gently places his foot on Alexander's knee and pushes off, spinning away. And in that spin, slaps the back of Alexander's head lightly. Like dusting furniture, the crowd begins to murmur. He's not just avoiding damage. He's playing Alexander is breathing heavier. Now he starts swinging wild, wider, angrier. Faster, and then, for the first time, Frank strikes back with intent. Alexander throws a jab. Frank slips his steps inside and lands a liver shot with the flat part of his wrist wrap. Not enough to break anything, but enough to stun Alexander, grunts and stumbles. Oops. Frank says softly, almost apologetically. That one had feelings. Alexander growls and throws a haymaker. Frank rolls under it and counters with a palm to the sternum. Not a punch, just a push. But the placement and timing are perfect. Alexander stumbles backward 5 feet. Demetri nods. He's in the rhythm now. Frank advances slowly, 1 foot in front of the other, like he's walking towards a campfire. He doesn't flinch when Alexander throws a right hook. Instead, he ducks under it and flicks a jab open-handed, right on the tip of Alexander's nose. It makes a tiny boop sound. Frank speaks finally between exhales. "You fight with theory, but I fight with memory." Alexander swings again, wild, insulted. Frank catches his wrist and leads in his mouth an inch from Alexander's ear. Pain isn't the point, understanding is. He lets go Alexander. Now Boiling rushes forward. Too late. Frank steps back, shifts his shoulder, just barely out of line of fire. Encounters with a shoulder check to the chin. Not enough to drop him, but enough to humiliate. The crowd gaffs some cheer. Some boo, but all are watching. Then comes the moment. Alexander winds up a thunderous spinning elbow. His signature, and Frank sidesteps it, catching Alexander's all momentum and guiding it with his forearm, sending him spiraling into the cage wall. Frank doesn't follow, he just waits calm, breathing evenly, not a scratch on him. The ref glances at the clock. 10 seconds left. Alexander lunges one last time. Desperate, and Frank delivers a sidestep and sweep, tripping him mid-sprint and letting him crash into the canvas in a mess of limbs and fury. Ding, ding, ding. Round 2 is over. Frank walks back to his corner, still smiling, still breathing easy. Demetri hands him another juice box. Elegant as always, he says, lighting a fresh cigar. Frank takes a sip, he's getting mad. That's when they make mistakes. Demetri smirks. Then it's almost time for the Simon. Alexander across the ring is fuming, chest-heavy, eyes wide. And for the first time in his life, he feels afraid. The bell cracks like a thunderclap. Frank steps forward slowly, in the same spring in his stride, that same curl to his grin. But something's different now. There's no witty banter, no theatrical declarations, just the sound of his breathing and a low, soft hum vibrating in his throat. Wait a second. He's humming a simple tune, monotone. Wordless, like a lullaby from a war god's childhood. Alexander raises his fist. More pissed off than puzzled. Frank lifts his lone arm and announces casually, "Okay. I won't use my right arm at all." Alexander scoffs a snort full of contempt. "You don't have a right arm." Frank tilts his head like a curious bird, and the hum dips an octave. "Oh, you're right," a pause. His smile whitens, see. "I'm already telling the truth." And then he returns to the hum. Alexander launches himself forward. The first combo is vicious. A jab cross hook. Elbow, and it lands. All of it. Frank shifts slightly, absorbing the blows like a windsock in a hurricane. His knees bend, his body whips with each impact. But he doesn't fall. Doesn't blink, grunt. The smile stays. The hum continues. It's just loud enough now for Alexander to hear it. And worse, feel it. The tune is riding his heartbeat, syncing to it, matching his every beat per minute. This is not an accident, it's not a taunt. That's intimacy, pure intimacy. Frank is trying to find him. Alexander growls and digs a left hook into Frank's ribs. Then another points. He's racking up points. Frank's body folds with each hit like a paper crane. But he's not retreating, he's pressing forward. Frank hums louder now. And the pitch shifts just slightly, like he's adjusting to the tempo of Alexander's pulse. It's not a song, it's a hunt. Alexander fires a knee to his gut. And then a spinning back elbow. Then another jab, all land clean. He's cutting angles, staying sharp. Staying fast, the crowd is going nuts. The scoreboard lights up. Alexander is dominating this round, but Frank is there. Alec always an inch too close. Always just off the center line. Never retreating, never reacting. Just watching, just humming. A bead of sweat rolls down Alexander's temple. It hits his glove that's new. He never sweats in rounds 3. Frank steps in again, arms down, chin high like an invitation. Alexander doesn't take it. But why? Because for the first time, when Frank smiled, Alexander felt it in his stomach. That smile wasn't smug, it wasn't playful. It was primordial. It was a wolf's grin stretched over a monk's face. It whispered, "You're not hitting me. You're dancing for me." Alexander throws a few more jabs. More out of obligation. This strategy Frank doesn't counter, doesn't speak, just tracks him with the same low hum and dead, delighted eyes. 10 seconds left. Frank finally stops moving forward, plants his feet, tilts his head. One last hum, one last note. Ding, 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 round 3 ends. The crowd is on their feet, confused. Cheering unsure, Alexander walks back to his corner, with a solid lead on points. Sweat soaking his back, his lungs burning, and yet, he feels like he just spent 5 minutes swimming with something ancient, something that doesn't bleed, something that doesn't blink, something that learned his heartbeat. Round 4, the bell rings. And the moment it does, something shifts, not in the pit, but in the stands. We pan to 2 audience members, half lit by the glow of the Titan's size. Above the cage, one is wearing a Crack the Loser's pin. The others had a foam finger and a confused look. "Bro," the foam finger guy says. Brow furrowed. Frank is so behind in points. How's he gonna come back from this? It's round 4. He hasn't landed a single real hit. His friend doesn't even look at him. He's too busy watching Frank sway on his feet. Like a man drunk on violence. "Must be a bunch of new fans," he mutters before finally turning. "You really don't get it, do you?" He leans in close. Frank's not here to win on points. He's here to learn. And when the bell rings for round 5, he smiles, slow, reverent. That's when he shows you what you taught him this. He gestured to the ring. "This is just tenderizing." Back in the pent, Frank's grin is unnatural. His jaw is practically unhinged. He's breathing through his teeth, like an animal trying not to laugh at a funeral. Alexander stays back, gloves high, bouncing light on his feet. Frank Lett takes a single step forward. Arms still down, "Come on, champ." He coos sing. Almost sing-song, "Hit me. Hit me like you mean it, pretty please." Alex flinches. Frank tilts his head. Oh. Are you scared of little old me? Alexander grinds his teeth and explodes a full barrage. Hooks, uppercuts, stomp, spinning elbows. Brutal liver shots, the entire playbook. Every special technique he's mastered. Every devastating fury his team drilled into his DNA. From age 6 to now he's fighting for his legacy. For his name, for his pride. And Frank isn't blocking. Frank isn't dodging, Frank is limp fluid. Absorbing each strike with the same baby fall softness. He folds into the bunches. His feet slide just enough. His head whips with the momentum. No tension, no resistance, just acceptance. It's like he's trying to punch water. Alex screams and throws a haymaker, his finishing move of the Liberty death blow. A violent, twisting overhead smash meant to obliterate. It connects with Frank's forehead. Frank doesn't budge, he doesn't fall, he doesn't flinch. He smiles and then opens his arm. His one singular, lone left arm. Alexander hesitates. Chest heaving. His arms slack with exhaustion and desperation. Frank steps forward and hugs him gently. Delicately, like he's tucking in a sleeping child. He leans in close and whispers, with sweat, with breath sweet as carnage. In around 5, you will see what you taught me. The bell sounds, the end of round 4. Frank turns slowly and walks towards his corner, like he's exiting a meditation session, not a battlefield. Alexander stumbles back to his own, gulping air like a man who forgot how to breathe. His team is yelling at him in frantic bursts. Meanwhile, at Frank's corner, there is no team. Just a folding chair, by the way, and Demetri. Cigar unlit, coat off. Sleeves rolled, no clipboard, no towel, just a look in his eye. Like he's watching a force of nature. Frank sits not heavily. Almost reverently, Demetri breaks the silence first. You know, you keep fighting like that honestly, and people are gonna start thinking you got a death wish. Frank doesn't speak right away. He rolls his neck, cracks his knuckle. Stares out at the arena with that same undeniable, unreadable joy etched into his face. You ever cook a brisket, Demetri? He finally asked, his voice low, velvety calm. Demetri squints. You're talking meat right now. You're bleeding, kid. Frank wipes a trickle of blood from his cheek and smiles wider. Takes 16 hours. You can't rush it. You gotta feel the temperature. Gotta listen to the meat when it starts to sing. It's been in there, learn. I've been in there learning his rhythm, Demetri, his breath, his heartbeat, his soul, every punch he threw. I memorized every move. I studied Demetri like his cigar. You're saying you got him figured out? Frank stands slow and graceful. No, I'm saying... He stretches his lone arm above his head, stretching, cracking. I've already become him. And now I'm gonna show him what he looks like, with better footwork and a prettier smile. You see, Frank's body is not a temple. It's a library, every scar a page, every fracture a chapter, and right now is holding the entire story of Alexander inside it. Because here's a secret no one wants to admit. Frank feels everything, he just loves it. Every punch from round 1 to now, it's still there, nestled in his muscles, embedded in his bones, etched into his nervous system like holy scripture. But instead of letting it destroy him, he absorbs it, loves it, learns from it. Alexander has been fighting to win. Frank has been fighting to understand. And now heading into the 5th and final round. Frank isn't fighting as himself anymore. He's fighting as Alexander refined. And he's going to do onto Alex exactly what was done onto him. Only cleaner, sharper, faster, and with grace. Because pain was a tuition. And Frank. Frank has graduated round 5. The bell sounds. Frank doesn't move like a man entering a final round. He moves like a conductor, stepping up to his orchestra poised, present and ready to create violence. Like his symphony, he's not even looking at Alexander. His eyes are closed, he's humming again. Dum 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 dum, dum dum, dum dum. The same rhythm as Alexander's heartbeat. The same BPM Frank memorized during round 3. The same tempo he's now tuned his movements to. Alexander charges forward. Fury masking fear, he launches a left hook crack. Countered instantly. Frank's body shifts like silk in wind. Alexander's punches graze air and eats a knuckle sandwich in return. Another flurry jab, cross uppercut thud. Smack the whack. Frank slips everything, and each slip is answered with a strike. Body shot liver drop, elbow to the shoulder. Palm to the chin. He's not swinging wildly. He's painting a portrait, each blow carefully placed. Each impact surgical, Alexander stumbles back. His mind is fracturing. Frank steps forward, like a preacher walking down the aisle. He's not talking now, no poetry, no banter, just humming a hymn of obliteration. Alexander tries to respond. He throws a desperate low kick, caught. Frank doesn't even look down. Just holds the ankle, taps the inside of Alexander's thigh with his foot, and spins him to the ground, but doesn't follow up. He lets him stand. Alexander is breathing hard again. Harder than usual, panics. Every neuron firing run. He goes for the last resort. Grabs at Frank's one arm. It should have been a lifeline. But Frank smiles the third joint in his arm. The one no human should have activated. Alexander grips tight in trying to control him, but instead Frank pulls him forward, body limp like cloth, the momentum unstoppable. In one motion, he wraps his limb around Alexander's arm and drops to the ground, twisting pop. The shoulder dislocates Alexander. House tries to retreat, but thwop. A single surgical sidekick lands to his temple. Not enough to knock him out, but enough to shatter the side of his skull, like a dry branch under a foot. Under a boot, even soft tissue damage. Internal bleeding. One side of Alexander's face collapses like wet clay. The bell rings. Frank's let go gently. Stands up, Alexander crumbles. The judges deliberate. They award the fight to Alexander. Winner by decision, Alexander. The crowd goes feral, booing, cheering, weeping, laughing. It's chaos, but one thing is clear. All eyes are on Frank. Reporters rush the cage. Microphones in hand, cameras snapping. Not a soul wants a word from Alexander. Frank, smiling, walks over to the broken man. He lifts Alexander's left dangling arm with this one. Good hand. Good job. His voice is warm. You are an excellent teacher. He pulls him into a half hug. Blood dripping from both their mouths, and beams out wide-eyed into the crowd. We're best buddies now, Alexander. Barely conscious tries to form a word, but only sobs come out, and the crowd, they interject into a chant. They erupted into a chant as shakes the cathedral walls. That's my loser, that's my loser. That's my loser. Frank sits, cross-legged in the center of the concrete cage, still in his Salavi shorts, unbothered and glowing. There isn't a bruise on his face, no limp in his step, no pain in his breath. If anything, he looks rejuvenated, like he just took a long, hot shower and a nap in the sun. A reporter practically dives in front of him. Mic first, Frank. You just went 5 brutal rounds with one of the world's hardest strikers. How are you feeling? Frank leans forward, tilts his head like a child hearing music for the first time, and grins with genuine delight. Peachy. Just peachy, like a hug wrapped in a waffle. The crowd laughs, not sure if they're allowed to. He continues swinging his one arm casually, like he's chatting with an old friend at brunch. Alexander was incredible, the way he moved. The rhythm of his heartbeat, the tempo of his rage, it was beautiful. I really hope he fights again. He's got spirit. Well, he had spirit. Reporters try to jump in with follow-up questions, but Frank keeps talking, eyes glowing with purpose. And now I get to lose again. Soon 1495 is coming up. I can't wait to see who teaches me next. You know what I always say? Every loss is a new scar, and every scar is a syllabus. The reporters chuckle nervously. One brave journalist leans in. You seem unusually optimistic about all this. We know you've been losing for 15 years now, but are you ever gonna start winning? Frank's eyes go wide, his smile grows wider. Oh, absolutely. After 15, the air shifts, even the microphones go still. Another reporter blinks. What happens at 15? Frank leans forward, whispering like he's letting them in on a secret. I've got a little surprise for the world. Let's just say I'm almost done cooking. He taps his temple, then his heart. Once I've learned everything, the final exam begins. The reporters erupt in questions. But Frank just hums, skips out the cage like a boy on his way to recess. Cut to a dim, sterile room that reeks of bleach and sweat. Alexander sits on a steel bench shirtless, ribs wrapped in ice and ice. Also on his face, a small puddle of vomit at his feet. His once pristine gloves are stained with blood. Some his, some Frank's, and some hard to tell. 3 reporters are still there. Hesitant, mics out. Cameras rolling, Alex. How do you feel about your win? No answer, just shaking. Do you feel you proved yourself against Frank? He doesn't look up, Alex. And then, retching, he leans to the side and throws up again violently. He wipes his mouth with the back of his hand, sweat clinging to his eyebrows like regret, and starts sobbing, ugly shuddering. Choking sobs, I don't want to do it again. His voice is barely audible through the tears and bile. I don't want to fight him again. I don't want to go back in there. I don't want to do it again. The reporters exchange glances. One turns off her mic. Another quietly closes their notes. Slowly, one by one, they leave, leaving behind the victor of the night alone, broken, crying in his own vomit. While the loser, well, he's probably skipping through a field right now, dreaming of fight number 1495 and smiling like a psychopath. You see, Frank wasn't built for this world. He was bent into it, molded by desperation, tempered by agony. And if you're asking him how it happened, he wouldn't cry, he wouldn't rage, he wouldn't point fingers at fate. He just smiled that warm, stupid sunshine of a smile. That looked like it didn't belong to anywhere near. A cage in blood, and he'd say the world hit me so hard. I fell in love with gravity. He was 21 years old, but in that weary body and shattered, knuckled soul lived the weight of 100 lifetimes. Lessons most men learned at 50. Frank had absorbed by 6. Some people learn through books, often others through mistakes. But Frank, he learned through impact, through fists, through split lips and cracked ribs, through screams he didn't have time to process, because the next hit was already coming. He wasn't trained to win, he was trained to endure. Trained to last raised, not like a son, but like a gamble, because Demetri the Mad broke. Half-dressed former promoter, who found Frank in a dumpster as a baby, didn't have a blueprint for love. Just debts, regrets, and the kind of charisma that sold losses as miracles. And somehow, even in all that failure, he gave Frank dinner before himself. He gave warmth in a world that forgot what warmth was. Frank never blamed the world. He forgave it again and again, with that same toothy grin that made winners uneasy, that cruelty, the unfeeling kind, that just hums in the background of broken homes and crowded hospitals, turned into something impossibly kind. So kind it was sickening, so kind it seemed sarcastic. He wasn't like the other fighters. He was sincere even when joking. He was soft even when breaking bones. Frank, for all it's worth, hated labels. Hated when people turned them into shortcuts. For judgment, excuses to stop listening. He refused to be defined by any word other than his own breath. He didn't believe in tribes. He didn't believe in heroes or villains. Just people, just pain, just the precious fleeting lessons learned, hidden inside every moment of failure. If you label a person, he once said in an interview, you stop listening to them. That's when learning dies. And Frank lived to learn even in pain. No, especially in pain. At 6 years old, he entered the junior division of the chain-link Cathedral, a cage designed for child gladiators. With adult appetites, his glove was too tight, his shorts too long, and his jaw too soft. His opponent was juiced, trained, and hungry. Frank lost. And then he lost again and again. 100 times alone in that year at 6 years old. And Demetri, God blessed a twisted soul, bet against him every single time. Not because he lacked belief, but because this was the only way to feed him. If Frank could survive a full round, they ate if he got knocked out. They went hungry, so Frank survived. Through rib-crushing punches and head-rattling kicks. Through dislocated joints and bloody gums. He stayed standing, or at the very least, he got back up in the crowd. Oh, the crowd. They started to notice. A boy who never won but never stopped. A boy who took pain like it was communion. That's when the myth began. That's when the loser was born. The child who couldn't win, but also couldn't quit, but his name. That plain, boring name. Just Frank. In a world full of fighters named the Cranium Collector and Johnny Bricks and Posthumous Pete. That name made people furious for some reason. Because you can't brand Frank. You can't merchandise Frank. You can't sell cereal with a name like Frank. What they didn't know, what he never told a soul, was that it wasn't even his true birth name. That was an unknown mystery. It was Demetri's father's name, a man Demetri both cursed and missed. And in one of his rare, somber nights, Demetri told Frank, "If I'm a failure, let me raise the greatest failure this world has ever known, and let him show the world that failure is sacred." So when Frank stepped into that arena, with his hair wild like a lion's mane, and his boxers stitched with the words say, LAV, he wasn't just walking into a fight. He was walking into a philosophy. A manifesto made of bruises, a declaration that the only thing stronger than winning was learning from loss, because to him, every defeat was another stone in the monument he was building. After every fight without fail. Whether his bones ached like war drums or his skin buzzed with adrenaline, Frank would walk the long marble hallway back into the lion's den of luxury. Demetri's estate, it was a monstrosity of a home, a palace carved of ego and debt, towering spires and chandeliers that dripped like frozen honey. Everything gilded and needlessly curvy. The ceilings were painted with the murals of Greek tragedies, angels and titans and blood-red skies. Gold trim outlined every step and every door, every absurd antique vase that cost more than Frank's entire education. He hated it. Too shiny, he always muttered, like it mocked him. Like it wanted to reflect a version of himself that he didn't recognize, polished, pampered, primed. Frank preferred grime mode. The sound of bugs tapping windows like tiny, rhythmic fists still. He came back not for the marble tubs, not for the silk robes that Demetri insisted he wear after fights, not for the attention or the press waiting outside the gate. He came back for the meal, and for Rosie. Rosie had been the first servant Demetri ever hired, back when the money started rolling in at 11. Frank had just become famous, enough to eat 3 meals a day again. And Demetri, in his infinite lack of wisdom, thought if we're gonna be rich, losers might as well be rich and full. So he hired Rosie, a battle-worn woman in her 40s, who wore slippers everywhere, even in the kitchen, and spoke only when she had something to say. She cooked, she cleaned, and over time, she became more than just the head of the estate staff. She became the soul of the household. She ran the other 5 servants like a general, commanding lieutenants, and though they technically answered to Demetri, everyone knew the estate belonged to Rosie. Every post-fight meal was a masterpiece, a memory you could chew. Tonight's spread stretched across a 15-foot table of dark acacia wood that had once belonged to an African warlord before Demetri liberated it at an auction. At the center, a massive roast duck basted in orange blossom, honey and pomegranate molasses, its skin shimmering like lacquered glass, crisp to a whisper, thin snap. It rested atop a bed of Persian jeweled rice, long grain and perfumed with saffron, studded with candied orange peel pistachios, dried cranberries and silvered almonds. A dish Rosie had learned in her brief stint, working for a Persian ambassador's wife. Frank loved that rice so much, he once said, "If I die mid-fight, sprinkle this over my grave, and let the ants have a feast. I'll probably come back to life. Next to it, a plate of steaming, braised oxtail slow-cooked in a red wine. Garlic and leeks, a Haitian comfort dish that took 10 hours to make, and only 4 minutes for Frank to destroy. The meat slid off the bone, like it was ashamed to still be attached, and the marrow was thick and buttery, enough to spread on toast. To the left, Japanese karaage fried chicken, twice fried and drenched in yuzu kosho mayo. Inspired by Rosie's time station in Okinawa as a young exchange death, she still remembered the old woman who taught her, who had said in broken English, "Fry chicken like you fry revenge," slowly twice. Beside it, Neapolitan lasagna with hand-rolled pasta sheets, a blend of buffalo mozzarella and taleggio cheese. Sandwich between ragu that had simmered for 6 hours in tomatoes, grown from the greenhouse behind the estate. Rosie grew these tomatoes herself. They tasted like sunlight and promises. There were Moroccan lamb meatballs, crushed in harissa and drizzled with mint yogurt. Indian chana masala, cooked so precisely the chickpeas burst, never crumbled. Caramelized sweet potatoes with cinnamon, grown in by the estate by one of the younger servants, who had a knack for root veggies. A single plate of cold soba noodles with sesame oil, seaweed flakes, and cucumber slices that taste like memory. And finally, Frank's favorite, a stupidly large cast-iron skillet of cornbread. Crusty on the outside, fluffy on the inside, made with actual buttermilk and honey from Rosie's own bee box, tucked in the estate's neglected orchard. He smothered it in goat butter and strawberry jam, sighing like it was his first taste of joy. Frank never ate in the formal dining room. He hated how the chandelier flickered like judgment. Instead, he ate in the side parlor barefoot. Sitting on the floor, surrounded by cushions he stole from the guest rooms, the staff joined him as always. Rosie sat nearest a small glass and of wine in hand, while the others Toma, who was the silent butler. He was lanky, angular, and possibly straight-backed, a long white scar that runs from the side of his jaw. Down to his collarbone, Toma is almost like a specter. He glides more than he walks, always wearing black gloves, and a tailored gray suit with an obsidian tie. His face is stone and motionless, but never cold, more like marble. Carved with precision, rather an ice girl from Cruelty. He has eyes like winter lakes, pale blue and still always watching, though he never speaks. Everyone in his estate understands him. He nods, his nods are gospel. A glance from Toma is louder than a scream. He's been with Demetri since the glory years, before Frank became a legend. They say he used to be a pit fighter himself, a world-class tactician unbeatable. Until he lost one perfect match, and swore never to make another sound. For as long as he lived, he never speaks of it. And he never speaks at all. He is Frank's barber, oddly enough, and trims his wild mane with monk-like care before every fight. At least the other person that is sitting besides them. The gardener's chef, compact, weary dirt under her nails at all times. A sleeve tattoo of every plant she's ever grown, shaking from her wrist to her collarbone, shaded in deep green and soft velvet ink. A soft violet ink. Elise smells like basil and rainwater. Her voice is soft, but it cuts through noise like wind through reeds. She's always chewing something. A leaf, a stick of cinnamon, the air itself. She oversees the gardens, the greenhouse, the beehives, and all things that live. She was once a Michelin-starred chef, but after a nervous breakdown at a Tokyo restaurant, she ran away into the dirt and never looked back. She says growing food for Frank is the most spiritual act she's ever committed. He calls her Mother Earth with knives. She also is the only one who taught. She's also the one who taught Frank how to breathe. Not for fighting, but for stillness. When he's anxious, she's the one he seeks out. There's Branco, the former bodyguard turned house manager. Broad-chested ex-military frame. Gone soft with age, he has a large, faded tattoo across his neck that reads, "I am not what I was." Branco used to be a bounty hunter. A legend across Eastern Europe, who whispered about him breaking people's spines in 12 different languages. He wore suspenders and rolled-up sleeves, and always had a toothpick in his mouth. His mustache is too big, his stories are too long, but his love for Frank is real. He calls him champion, but Frank has never won anything. He keeps the estate running like a warship, every hour scheduled, every blade sharpened. His hands are gnarled and thick, made from cracking walnuts or skulls. He trains with Frank sometimes. They call it the gentle violence. Just slow sparring, but it's Franco's favorite hour of the week. He once said, "I hunted monsters. Then I met one who wanted hugs. That boy saved my soul. Then there's Sonia." The living nurse soft. nurturing but with deceptively strong arms. Always wears red lipstick. No matter what, Sonia is the only one in the estate who calls Frank out on his bull. She loves him, but she refuses to cuddle him. She has a degree in advanced biomachine, military trauma training, and a tendency to slap Frank on his back, and on the back of the head when he jokes. Through a concussion, she's patched him up more times than she can count. Her hair is always in a tight bun, and she wears a pristine, white uniforms that never wrinkle. No matter how wild the estate gets, she hums lullabies while stitching wounds. Frank once told her, "You're the mom I would have had if life wasn't so mean." She smiled and said, "Then sit still. You little goblin, I'm sterilizing your liver." And finally, Lester the chaotic handyman. Finn Jittery wears 6 watches on one arm, and none of them are correct. Lester's job is unclear officially. He's the handyman, but he's also the estate's wild card. He wears cargo shorts year-round and is always building something dangerous and unnecessary: grappling hooks, Molotov drones, rotating beds. He talks fast and thinks faster, and once tried to build Frank a hoverboard. Made out of leaf blowers, it caught fire. He still defends it for science. Lester thinks Frank is the coolest piece of anti-capitalist performance art since Banksy. He believes Frank's career is a part of a long form of revolution. He writes loose newsletters about it all. Took their place like it was a family dinner. Frank ate with his hands. He complimented every dish with the enthusiasm of a child at a carnival. "Rosie," he said, mouthful, "this duck could end wars." "Then eat it before the UN shows up," she muttered, pouring him another glass of elderflower soda. "At least, these sweet potatoes make me want to commit crimes." "Then I'll grow more for your trial." He smiled, and for a few hours, the world outside the greed, the violence, the flashing cameras, the bruising and bones and performance contracts, it all faded, It was all just food, just people, just laughter and belching and food comas. When he was done, Frank would stretch out on the floor, shirtless, covered in crumbs, sighing so deeply it rattled the windows. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Tell the Cathedral to wait. I've got joy to digest first." And Rosie, ever the guardian angel of burnt boys, would lay a blanket over him and whisper back, "Digest slowly, my darling." He was always gone back to his home. In the morning, we see Frank shirtless, sun-scorched and grinning like a lunatic, sprinting barefoot through the Mojave Desert, cradling a full-grown, unconscious man over his left shoulder, as if he were groceries, sweat glistening off his skin like lacquered bronze, and his hair flows behind. Above him, a murder of vultures. Except these aren't your garden variety scavengers. No. These beasts are gargantuan. Wingspans wider than pickup trucks, their feathers black as spilled ink, and eyes like dying suns. Frank's voice booms through a GoPro-style live stream, bouncing on a rig strapped awkwardly to his chest. "Hey losers, it's your boy Frank." Still the undefeated, in the art of taking an ass-whooping. Today's training cardio with consequences. He waves at the camera as a vulture swoops, low enough to clip his cheek with a talon. Blood trickles, but Frank just laughs. "This is Barnaby," he shouts, slapping the unconscious man on the back, like he's introducing a dinner guest. "He's a tax evader, but he's helping me train my lower back rotation." The chat explodes over 1 million live viewers. Hearts emotes fire. The comments feed. The comment feed is an ocean of chaos. Bro is in his anime arc. What is happening? Why are the birds so big? Does this count as a sparring session? We cut to streamers around the world. We smash cut to a popular fighting game. Streamer eyes wide are playing footage of Frank's dodging a vulture, mid-sprint by cartwheeling under a cactus. Okay, hear me out. If Frank starts winning now, really winning, it could change the whole economy of the chain. League sponsors fighters. Master Race's viewership drops. The very nature of combat changes. He was the algorithm, another streamer. A conspiracy content creator overlays red strings between photos of Frank, Demetri, and various match outcomes. I've been tracking this since Lost 1-3-12. It's clear it was all intentional. a pattern he was never trying to win. He was training everyone else to be afraid of him. That's what he was doing, inside the glass palace of Link Corp Entertainment. A boardroom full of promoters, marketing agents, and analysts are screaming. If he starts winning fast, we lose money. Our whole retention model is built on 5 rounds. Minimum, he's turning into a dominant fighter. He was supposed to be a lovable punching bag. A chart flashes on the screen. Viewer engagement over time. At the bottom, a red alert. Projected win streak in danger zone. Lost 1499 through 1505. A marketing director collapses in a chair. Pale as shock, he said he has a surprise for 15. Well, what if it's efficiency? Silence, everyone gulps. One man whispers. We're not ready for a fast Frank. Back to Frank. Frank looks at the camera again, completely unfazed by the desert heat, the bleeding scratches, or the fact that Barnaby is now groaning and waking up. Anyway, we're almost there. Lost 1496 tomorrow, that's 6 away from my big moment. I love you all. I love the pain, I love the learning. I love the birds, say hi birds. The vulture screams overhead. They're shy. Frank skips a little now, his bare feet leaving small craters in the dust, his smile never once fading. The world watches streamers debate, promoters, panic fighters hide, and Frank just wants to make it to 15. You're probably wondering who the fan is. Over his shoulder, that was a man Frank was saving from the vultures, who passed out trying to dog in the desert. Just in case you're curious, we cut to Frank's neighborhood. Frank lives in a neighborhood that doesn't have an official name. The map listed as District 8A. But nobody uses that, they call it the furnace. Because of how much pain and pressure it takes to shape someone strong enough to leave, and how much soul it takes to stay. The streets are painted in spilled oil and half-burned flyers, electrical wires hanging like cobwebs, between crooked streetlights that buzz like hornets. The sidewalks are cracked and angry, overgrown with weeds that refuse to die. Much like the people who walk them, abandoned cars have been turned into grills. Living rooms, makeshift gyms. Fire barrels never go out. They're beacons, it's loud. Except when it's not, you see. The gangs, the dealers, the thieves, they all made a pact when Frank is asleep. The whole neighborhood goes silent. Our curfew enforced not by law, but by loyalty. No music, no gunshots, no arguing. They whisper around his window, tiptoe near his fence, because to them, Frank is more than a fighter. He's the guardian ghost of the furnace. Frank never acted better than them. He never tried to escape like the others. He stayed on purpose. They offered him apartments, lofts, rooms in the Cathedral, and he always refused. He trains with the kids in the alley behind the bodega. He brings fresh bread and rice to the families whose paychecks disappear under hospital bills or addiction. He teaches balance to ex-bangers, trying to walk back into humanity. He plays dice with old men who used to be kings in gang wars. And when the cockfights get out of hand and the gas fires start dancing, clue too close to the kids, Frank is the one who walks in barefoot, non-blinking, and everyone calms down. Not because he's scary, but because they respect him too much to let him down. To outsiders, this place looks like a cursed district. A war zone without a war. Reporters drive past with their windows up. Delivery apps don't even list addresses there. Government officials call it a dead zone, but that's the point, it protects itself. The furnace is an armor. They act wild for the cameras. They throw bottles when drones fly by. They shoot fireworks sideways and spray graffiti over every inch of stone and soul. But behind the curtain, there's a tenderness no suburb could understand. We cut to Frank's house, and calling it a house would be generous. It's a slump shack nestled on the edge of a dead-end road, behind a forgotten gas station, as if the earth itself had tried to bury it in shame. But missed the walls are splintered planks, rotting and groaning like arthritic bones in the wind. The roof sags, one of the windows is boarded shut, with a for sale sign from 2003, faded and cracked down the middle. The front door creaks with a noise. That sounds like a whimper from a dying animal. Inside, the place is like a time capsule of stubborn poverty. No TV, no couch. Not even a table. Just a bunch of empty takeout containers, chip mugs and duct tape. Appliances that probably haven't worked in years. A single bulb dangles from the ceiling, swinging slowly despite the absence of breeze. The floor is stained and soft with water damage, but it's where Frank sleeps. No mattress, no pillow. Just a blanket with cartoon characters from a long, canceled show, and a pile of laundry that doubles as warmth. Next to it, a colony of roaches click and skitter. Frank watches in and nods at them. "Hey, fellas, miss me a few twitch?" One crawls across his foot. "Me too." The walls are moated, growing strange patterns of decay. Like abstract murals of suffering, Frank walks past them, like an old friend revisiting a graveyard. He crouches down in the corner, in front of a cracked mirror, resting across against the bucket. He wipes some dust from the mirror with his palm, sees his reflection, one amber eye glowing. Hair a disaster teeth like Steve. Still gleaming with that damn near supernatural joy, he softly mutters to himself. "It's almost time to start." His voice doesn't echo in the room, not because it's too quiet, but because the house absorbs everything like a tomb. There's no applause here, no chants, no lights, just Frank and the roaches. And the black spot on the wall that appears alive. He lies down on the floor, eyes open, arms across his chest, like he's already in a coffin. He breathes in the moldy like air. Incense, peaceful still. Somewhere far away, the world debates if he's the most dangerous man alive. But here he's just a loser, resting before the world burns. 2 months later, the world has grown quiet in anticipation. It was a day before Frank's 1500th match, and this wasn't just any fight. This was the end of an era, a monument carved out of sweat, bone, and ritualized failure, a milestone of loss that somehow tasted like victory to millions. The losers his sprawling cult-like following. I become hosting viewing parties in every major city. Murals of Frank mangled, grim, were painted on the walls of alleyways and underpasses. Tattoos with $14.99 and red ink, now marked on the skin of faithful. His failure had become scripture, and tomorrow he will be fighting Toby Alfred. Toby Alfred was once the warlord of Eastwood Heights, a broken, underfunded corner of the world, swallowed whole by crime at 13. He stowed a man for the first time. At 17, he was overseeing 3 drug rings. By 19, he had orchestrated a car bombing that killed 6, including his own cousin. His rage was legend. He couldn't feel guilt, only hunger. Violence only made him feel seen in the anger. He lost his only son. This would only fuel his anger, but still had his childhood friend. And that's what kept him going. But it all changed in prison. On a rainy November day, Toby watched his childhood friend die in his arms. During a riot, he was holding his friend's blood, his tears, his regrets, and realized he couldn't remember a single day. They were happy together, something broke. He spent 18 months in solitary confinement for retaliation killings, and in that windowless tomb of silence, he found a smuggled book, The Teachings of the Empty Fist, a half-burnt karate manual with philosophical scribbles in the margins. The writings of a man named Hanzo Kudo, a long-dead master who believed that to break without breaking others is the path of the storm-turned tree. Toby memorized it. He changed slowly. And then all at once, after prison, he vanished into the mountains of Kyoto. People thought he was dead. But for 8 years, he trained starved, rebuilt his body and mind into something new. Now his wandering sensei, his fist, once filled with hatred, now whispered wisdom. When asked why he returned to fight, he simply said, "I must face the man who has failed most beautifully. I want to lose to him or become him." At the Soul Taco Dragon, Anna was finishing her post-fight meal. Her 999th win had been brutal. A spinning heel kick followed by a flurry of elbows to a woman twice her size. La Sombra Sagrada, the sacred shadow, had nearly made her opponent bite off her own tongue. But Anna didn't smile. Winning to her was routine, an expectation, a burden made out of perfection. Frank slid into the booth, across from her, still wearing gym clothes, still barefoot, still with the leaf stuck in his hair. He offered her a single mango mochi ball and grinned like a child. "You've been quiet lately," Anna said, poking Grufu without much interest. "That's dangerous." Frank leaned in, his amber eyes gleaming. I think you'll be proud of me soon. She scoffed. Why would I be? Did you finally move out of that rundown shack of home? Frank laughed gently, tapping the table rhythmically with his single finger. No. Because after I lose to this reformed ex-gang leader, I'm gonna take every lesson I've ever learned and make the world learn with me. Anna raised an eyebrow. What the hell does that mean? Frank sat back, looking almost calm. I failed 1,499 times. And every one of those failures taught me how to read fear, how to absorb pain, how to surrender ego and memorize another man's soul. That's what I do. That's what losing is for. Anna, ever the skeptic, folded her arms, and Frank smiled wider, this time with the eerie stillness of a man who's made peace with fire. And after I lose to Toby Alfred, the most reformed, disciplined, terrifying soul I've ever seen, I'll be ready to begin. Begin what she asked. He looked down at his calloused palm. The left one, the only one. Teaching the world how to fail gracefully, loudly, relentlessly. Anna leaned forward. You think you're changing the world? Frank nodded slowly. No, I think I already did, but I'm not done yet. I'm gonna make losing the most sacred art form we've ever known. Anna blinked and finally smiled just a little. You're insane, Frank laughed. That's what they said to all the prophets. The estate is lavish and gaudy, as if Las Vegas and a used car dealership had a baby. Interested in velvet? Neon signs hanging the walls for no reason. Golden statues of Demetri line the chairs. A champagne fountain drips endlessly. Even though no one's drinking, the halls are filled with the echo of Demetri's anxious pacing. The chandelier rattles not from movement, but from dread. Demetri's phone is exploding. 37 missed calls, 12 voicemails, hundreds of texts from sponsors, analysts, promoters, syndicates. He finally picks one up. His highest paying sponsor, Cracked Energy Water, a drink banned in 13 countries. A voice? Demetri, if your boy wins even once, we're pulling funding. No one wants a winner who doesn't play the game. Demetri, he's not gonna win. All right, he doesn't want to win. He loves losing. His performance art of voice over the phone. Then why won't he tell anyone what comes next? Demetri, because he's Frank. Damn it, he eats fire ants and runs on highways. He wants to try to hug a bear. Real Goldilocks energy, he's unhinged. Voice and what happens when he wins. Click another call going immediately to voicemail. This time from the Cathedral itself. Demetri, if Frank wins even once, the entire betting infrastructure collapses. You realize that, right? He's the control variable. He's the ghost in the code. He's the guarantee if he wins even once. Retroactive payouts, refunds. Lawsuits, a global audit of 401,499 matches. We lose billions, another sponsor. Spicy Popeye's gaming chairs. If Frank wins, we lose the sit like a loser campaign. Another Pizza Planet. Power supplements. If Frank wins. Our whole fail bigger go home marketing. Art dies another. The Losers channel, a dedicated 24/7 streaming network of all Frank's matches. Currently with 54 million active subscribers. If Frank wins, we have no underdog. Is the underdog, he's our Moses. You can't cross the sea if he stops walking. Demetri puts his phone down, wiping his sweaty forehead with a golden-plated napkin. He walks towards the balcony, where the lights of the Contently can future grow glow, like a coliseum, carved from the bones of forgotten kings. It hums in the distance like an ancient machine, and all it knows is Frank must lose. A much younger Demetri, greasy-haired, wearing a leopard print blazer, with 2 black eyes, crouches beside a dumpster of a boxing gym inside it. Wrapped in a naturally braided t-shirt, like a swaddle is baby Frank, barely alive, one-armed. Face bruised and eyes impossibly open for a newborn. Demetri lights a cigarette with a shaking hand. He's just been thrown out of his own event again. Roll don't like losers, kid. Frank sneezes, world spits on him. Laughs at him, feeds him to the dogs, then laughs when the dogs spit on him out. That's what happens to people who don't win. Frank burps, but you know what? Little freak, there's one thing worse than losing. He looks at the baby with fire in his bloodshot eyes. It's never showing up at all. He pulls the baby out with 2 hands. So here's the deal, kid. You lose a lot, but you show up and you never die. You become so good at losing, the world starts needing you, betting on you, building cathedrals around you. The baby wordless smile. Smiles, and Demetri says, "You lose so loud they have to listen." Back to the present day, we see Demetri. He sips a warm glass of room temperature champagne. Outside, helicopters circle the arena. News trucks clog the streets. Live broadcasts in 39 languages have already begun. He looks at Frank's old fight posters. Some of them comical, others taunting. 0 in 1, 83, 0 in 7, 40. 2-0 in 1302. They line the walls like tombstones with smiley faces. The terrifying part, Frank never looked happier. "You better lose tomorrow, you crazy, beautiful bastard," he whispers to the empty room. "Because if you win, you're not just breaking the system. You're breaking me." The sun leaks gold between the trees, like a bleeding halo, setting the forest ablaze in amber lights. The wind rustles the branches gently. But what cuts through louder is laughter. Not the good kind. It's mocking, mean-spirited, ugly. In a small clearing, a skinny kid, no older than 11, is curled on the ground, arms covering his head. 3 older boys are circling him, like sharks in dirty sneakers. One shoves him down again. Another kicks him in the face. "You're weak, why even try, twig? You're never gonna be anything but a punching bag." The boy doesn't cry. He just clutches his gut and breathes. And from the tree line, we see him, Frank, standing barefoot, shirtless, still scarred from his 499 fights. Hair wild like tangled roots. One arm hanging loose, his other non-existent. Just 3 joints where a full arm should be, each muscle defined. Like someone carved him out of stone. He watches in stillness, not angry, just not shocked, just present. The biggest of the bullies notices him. "Hey, freak, what are you looking at?" He walks up to Frank, balls his fist, and slams it directly into Frank's face. Twack. Frank's head barely moved. The kid immediately recoils, screaming, "My hand, what are you made of?" Frank smiles gently. Hi. What's happening here? The bullies don't wait. They run not just away, but deep into the woods. Frank kneels beside the boy, who's wide-eyed and still trying to process what he witnessed. "You didn't even flinch." Frank sits cross-legged beside him, picks up a fallen leaf and tosses it into the air. "Pain is just a tutor, dear boy." The boy looks confused. "What?" Frank chuckles softly. "Kid, you're gonna lose a lot in life. It feels like everything's stacked against you. Your body will feel weak. Your brain will scream. You're not enough. But you know what that really means?" He taps the boy's chest gently. "It means you've got more to learn than they do." Frank stands brushing off dirt and grins. "I've lost 499 times, still haven't cried about it." You know why the boy looked confused. Why? Frank's smile gets wider, unhinged, but warm. "Because every time I lose, I learn something they'll never understand." The boy blinks in awe. "Will you teach me?" Frank ruffles his hair and begins walking away. "Nah." "But the world will..." He turns his back one last time with a wink. "Just promise me one thing." The boy looks flustered. "Yeah." Frank raises his fist. "Lose loud." Frank walks into the humble crack sanctuary. His mold greets him from the walls. His pet roach, Philip, scuttles up to the side of a noodle cup. The moonlight leaks through his leaks, through holes in the roof, like a sunlight just for him. He kneels behind, besides the floor. No bed, just wooden dust. "I think I'm almost ready." And the roach nuts, probably. Official hype promo, the 15 loss. Frank versus Toby Alfred, black screen static. And then a whisper. "What if he wins?" You orchestra rise, booming timpani. Flashes of chain-link cathedral blood on concrete. Screaming fans. A narrator voice over in the heart of the pit. Where gods are broken and monsters are born. Where every scream echoes like a hum of brutality. The man with 1,499 intentional losses is about to face what may be his final failure. Or his first victory montage begins. Flash cuts glimpses of Frank taking vicious punches, smiling with a shattered face, whispered from fan number 1 and all. He never falls, fan number 2, crying, "He's the reason I get back up in the morning." Fan number 3 shaking if Frank wins. I don't even know what to do anymore. I don't know what to do with the world anymore. Slow motion shot of Frank walking barefoot through sand, holding his raps humming, and then a narrator voice for over a decade. He's been the final exam of the most violent men on earth. Not a test of skill, but of soul. He's turned 499 fighters into cautionary tales. Men who won by points, but lost something far more permanent. Smash cut Toby Alfred shirtless, breathing slow, tattoos coiled like snakes around his body, scarred knuckles, calm eyes. He kneels before a photo. Narrator voiceover, but on the other side of the ring stands a warrior reborn Toby Alfred, the reformed reaper, the tiger who learned the bow. Archival footage, grainy security tapes of young Toby in street fights. Gang tattoos, prison cells, riots, then fade into a smooth contempo movement. Karate belts, quiet meditation, the narrator voice over us again. A violent gang leader who left blood in every alleyway. A man who found balance in the chaos. Who buried his past with every precise strike. 154 wins, 0 losses. A master of karate, a ghost of his former self. He's been waiting, trading, hoping to be the next in the 101st. The elite group, the only one to survive. The mind of Frank and live to tell the tale. Cut to global footage. Cut to global footage of streamers. News anchors, brawling friends. Stock market's news anchors frantic. There are riots in 4 countries. Chainlink has postponed 6 champion battles just to watch this match. Streamer number 1 laughing nervously if Frank wins. The economy's toast. The whole league is based on retention. Frank draws blood and views. Streamer number 2 whispering, "You think sponsors want a fast knockout?" This man is YouTube's long-form violence god. If he starts winning, we'll all need new careers. Economist with a deadpan expression. The Chainlink Cathedral relies on Frank losing. If he wins, we don't know what happens next. Quick cuts, Demetri yelling into the phone. Betting apps, crashing journalist weeping at their desk. I don't know what he's planning. I'm his handler, not his prophet. Cue whispered chant. Whispered chanting from around the world, layering voices in every single language. That's my loser, that's my loser. Final shot before the title. Frank and Toby facing each other. Under the cathedral lights, calm. Sacred slow zoom. Narrator voiceover. One man seeks his 1500th loss. The other seeks to become the 102nd. And the whole world is holding its breath. Because what happens if Frank stops failing? What happens when the world's greatest loser finally wants to win title card? Blood red letters across concrete with a 150 of loss. Frank versus Toby Alfred streaming live on YouTube. Chainlink Cathedral, one man falls. One man learns who teaches who. The dim light flickers, twitching like a nervous eye. Paint peels from the walls. A broken bench creaks, under the weight of an empty champion, and sitting on a plastic crate with his leg. With his legs wide open and his hand plunged deep into a family-sized tub of hummus, is Frank. He's shirtless. Wearing short shorts with no shoes or socks. One arm gone, the other, glistening with olive oil and chicken chickpea paste. He's humming something, an old tune. Maybe made up, maybe ancient. Maybe both. Demetri stands in the door. He's dressed a little nicer than usual tonight. An old brown trench coat he only wears on holidays and funerals. A tie that used to be red, but has since retired to a dull wine stain. And loafers that still carry Vegas sand in their soles. Demetri watches his prized pupil as Frank pulls up a chunk. Pulls a chunk of Peter from somewhere unseen and licks the hummus from it like frosting. Demetri sighs. You sure how to make tradition weird, Frank? Frank with his mouth full, it's protein and joy. It's pro-joy teen. Demetri chuckles nervously, fiddling with the flip phone in his hand. Notifications are stacked a mile high. Text from sponsors, promoters, investors, execs, and the last one is a literal crying bishop. Demetri is slightly nervous. So we're here 15? Big number round. Symbolic, real poetic stuff. You finally gonna tell your old man. What the hell you're planning? Frank licks up, eyes shining like a happy animal in a thunderstorm. Best buddy, it's a surprise. Demetri's face tightens. Frank. I got Fortune 500 companies blowing up my phone, like my ex-wife used to. They're scared, kid. Real scared either you might win. And if you win, then well, God help the cathedral. Frank gently places the hummus down. Don't worry, buddy. I'm gonna lose like always. Demetri exhales like a balloon with trust issues. He walks closer, sits beside Frank, and looks at the cracked floor. You know when you were small? Like real small. I found you in that dumpster behind the boxing gym. Just a whimpering rag with half an arm and a full heart. I thought about leaving you there. I really did, but... He pauses. You look like you've already been disappointed by the world once, and I couldn't be the next one to do it. Frank wipes hummus off his pants and nods gently. You weren't. You were the first person who ever taught me something worth losing for. Demetri smiles, his eyes shimmer. He pats Frank's shoulder only once. Because he knows Frank is too warm if he does it twice. Whatever you do tonight, just don't forget who you are. Frank laughs. I won't. Demetri asked him a simple question. And who is that? Frank beams the crooked. Crazy cosmic smile. The world's greatest failure. They sit for a while in silence. And Demetri stands, grabs the hummus, and walks off chewing. The air in the room is heavy, not with fear, not with nerves, but something sacred. It smells like incense and old sweat. Toby Alfred kneels on the mat shirtless, his body a map of scars and recovery. His tattoos, once angry declarations of gang violence, have been blacked out, covered by elegant ink, conjoint tigers, dragons, chrysanthemums, and bloom. His hands are wrapped tight in white cotton. His GI pants creased and perfect. A single katana rests on a stand near his bed, his big ceremonial untouched, unsheathed. There is bag on ceremonial. Untouched on sheath, he bowed silently to a photograph. Placed in front of them, a boy no older than 15, smiling. His son behind him, his coach. An older Okinawan man with a single blind eye. Watches in silence. He would have turned 18 today. The coach nodded slowly, only responding. After a long silence, he's here. He sees what you've become. Toby stands bone cracking. Muscles coiling with precision. Every movement is controlled, balanced, earned. His calm is not fragile, it's volcanic peace. Peace made after war. I used to fight to survive. Then I fought to punish myself. Now I just want to honor every moment I've been given. If I die in that ring, I'll die in balance. The coach raises an eyebrow. You won't die. But you will face a man who has... Toby chuckles softly. Frank's not a man. He's a force of nature. I don't even think he knows how terrifying he is. He walks to the center of a room and practices a kata, slow and deliberate, each strike cutting air like silk. He stops, breathes, and exhales. Here's the funny part. I want to lose. I want to give that man what he's looking for. I want him to feel seen, but I know I can't fake it. I'll do everything I can to win, and somehow that's what will make him smile. The coach murks, then you understand. Outside the door, a reporter tries to peek in, but is stopped by a silent stare from Toby's assistant. Inside, the lights dim low. Toby sits again, resting his hand on the photo. The silence isn't awkward. It's holy, Toby chuckles. Tonight I will face the world's greatest failure. And if I'm lucky, I'll fail too. He smiles, not out of joy, but of some thought of something older, something cleaner, gratitude. It was strange to see the only undercard on the bill. The promoters were terrified. Terrified their fighters would be forgotten like that. The roar of the crowd would belong entirely to Frank's last loss. Most had pulled out some faked injuries. Even one brawler used to eat bricks for breakfast. Society the night was too emotionally crowded. But not Raul Santiago, not the once Prince of Pain. Raul Santiago was a Puerto Rican grappler, 6'3", built like an Olympian statue, sculpted out of volcanic stone, 250 pounds of peak performance, long black hair braided tightly with colored threads, thick, calloused hands, a neck like a tree trunk. He walked with the grace of a matador and the weight of an avalanche. His past was known. WWE fan favorite turned wrestling purist. Turned outlaw of the squared circle. Raul had traveled the globe, from Japanese death matches to lucha undergrounds, all in search of one thing: realness. He hated how corporate wrestling had become. "I didn't train in blood just to sell fruit snacks, man," he once said to a crowd of 20,000 in Mexico before walking off a stadium tour. So he came to the Chameleon Cathedral, where the hopes don't exist. Well, the ropes don't exist, and the audience loves their blood raw. He wore a gold-plated mouthguard, wrestling shorts with the thornless stitched across the waist, and elbow pads that still had traces of blood from a Tokyo street fight 3 months back. Every tattoo on his body was earned, never brought marks of where he fought, where he bled, who he lost to, and who he buried. And tonight he would not fight for money. Not for fame, but to remind the world he still existed. His opponent was confusing. For lack of a better word, Sergei Lutin was a 6'5" farmer with some barely named Russian oblast, where the winters from some barely named Russian oblast, where the winters teach you to fight for warmth and the summers teach you to fight for water. His hands were bigger than frying pans, and his back was hunched from years of loading hay and lifting oxen when they got tired. He looked like a man carved from bread and boulders. Wide-set jaw, bushy blonde eyebrows, sunburnt skin that peeled in flakes like parchment. He wore no armor, no flash. Just torn denim overalls, with one strap hanging off his shoulder and a white tank top stained with beet juice. He wore boots still caked in cow shit. He was unranked, untested, and absolutely unfazed when asked why he was fighting. He blinked slowly and spoke in broken English. "In bar, men swing bottle at me. I swing bottle back, it's fun. I want more bottle." He has never seen the cathedral before. He had never been to America. He wasn't sure if this was a tournament or a marriage proposal, but he liked the fights and the crowd made him laugh. So he signed the waiver and showed up. The crowd was confused. From the moment Sergei Lutin stepped in the arena, they weren't just confused. They were condescending, sneering, lacerating, whispering echoed like smoke through the stands. "From nosebleeds to VIPs, this guy is a bit Sergei." The barefoot Russian farmer in overalls, still stained from sunflower oil and chicken feathers, looked less like a fighter and more like a misplaced uncle on a family vacation. His shoulders were broad, like he had been lifting hay bales since birth, but his smile was warm, childlike. The kind of grin that suggested he hadn't come here to hurt anyone, just to enjoy the lights. He waved cheerfully to the audience members, hurling slurs and half-eating concessions at them. One child lobbed a corn dog his way. Serge caught it, sniffed it, took a bite, and bowed Raul Santiago. By contrast, was dripping with legacy. A former world-class wrestler, sculpted from media hype and steel, oiled and tanned like a prize bull. He stood 6'3", 250 pounds with designer knee pads and sponsored shoes that cost more than a small sedan. He shadowboxed with grace. With the grace of a man who already planned his post-fight victory tour, he wore cape stitch from Stitch, from gold-plated patches of past promotions, and stepped on the stage to a symphony of remix. Sirens and salsa, the arena whispered, worshipped him and whispered of his greatness. The announcer nearly lost his voice, introducing him, praising his transition from corporate stardom to underground blood sport. Raul was supposed to be the warm-up act before Frank's 1500th loss. He was the appetizer to Frank's steak, the flame before the main fire. When it came to introduce Sergei, the announcer stumbled, and in the other corner, he said, flipping through his notes, a farmer from somewhere in Russia, the barefoot brawler Sergei Lutin. The crowd broke into chuckles. A few boos, one fan screamed, "Where's your tractor farm boy?" Sergei just waved again, delighted. "It's good noise," he said out loud to no one. "Remind me of geese back home." Then came the bell. At 0.01 seconds, Raul launched into his practice footwork, ready to feint and slam and throw his opponent off rhythm. At 0.02 seconds, Sergei blinked, tilted his head like a confused puppy. and then took one single step forward. At 0.03 seconds, he delivered a short, explosive palm strike not to the face. Not to the gut, but directly to Raul's sternum. With the precision of someone cracking open a coconut, it sounded like a car crash underwater. Raul's body lifted into the air, all 250 pounds of it, flipping backwards unnaturally like a tossed mannequin. When he hit the mat, the thud wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. The crowd went silent. People dropped their phones. The commentators fell quiet mid-sentence. It took a moment for everyone to process. What just happened, Raul Santiago? The crown prince of performance was unconscious, mouthguard gone. Arms bent wrong, legs twitching. One of his knee pads had flown off into the third row. The medic sprinted in. The ref waved his arms wildly. Go! 3 seconds, it's over. Gasp rippled like thunder through the stands, followed by shrieks, curses, and desperate bet cancellations. Millions had lost money. Streamers stared into their cameras in disbelief. One influencer wept. The bookies looked like they'd seen God. Meanwhile, Sergei leaned over Raul's broken body and muttered, "You okay, friend? Maybe it's bad time to punch?" As they loaded Raul into a full-body exosuit, for emergency bone realignment, Sergei waved to the cameras, gave a thumbs up, and asked, "Do I get sandwich now? Maybe cookie?" In the fighter's lounge, Frank was cackling. "I love him. He's so fun." "Can we be friends? Can we be friends?" he said, bouncing on a couch, as medical staff nervously checked his pulse. "He fights like a sleepwalker. I want to spar with him in the forest." "Oh my God!" The world didn't know what to make of Sergei Lutin. Was he lucky? Was he divine? Was he trolling? The commentator scrambled to recover, claiming Sergei had probably military training. Or perhaps the grip strength of a god. Who knows? But as Sergei walked barefoot off the stage, smiling like a golden retriever who just found a stick, the entire world had just one question. Who the hell was this man? Frank had bolted from the fighter's lounge, shirtless, his wrap still clinging to his hand. His eyes were wild with joy, the kind of unfiltered glee only a child or a lunatic could possess. He stormed past reporters and staff, half pushing open security doors and sprinting barefoot across the concrete halls of one man searching for him. Sergei Lutin, but the Russian farmer. The barefoot bludgeoner of bones. The man who turned a titan in the soup with one touch. Was gone, not just missing. Gone, vanished from the quiet dignity of a... with the quiet dignity of a breeze that never asked to be noticed. There was no footage of him leaving. No hallway cams picking up his lopsided gets. No arena staff reporting his exit. No that the official records showed him checking in, fighting, and then simply not existing. It was as if Sergei had walked straight back in the myth. Frank stood in the parking lot, spinning in circles, calling out into the night, like a kid who lost her kite in a thunderstorm. "Sergei, where'd you go, buddy?" "I wanted to ask you about your stance." But all he received in return was the echoes of sirens and hums of vending machines resetting. A few security guards passed by, giving Frank odd looks as he stood shirtless beneath the parking lot lights, grinning and squinting at shadows, like they might answer him, and the world stitched together with constant surveillance. Geo-tracking and digital breadcrumbs. Sergei had pulled the impossible, disappearing like a ghost, who only wanted one swing before fading. Demetri later remarked in passing that the disappearing made him deeply uncomfortable, because it reminded him that some people were built outside the systems. "There's always one anomaly," he said, lighting a cigar with a shaky hand. "One weirdo the system can't predict. Frank was one and Sergei's another. And God help us if they share a meal. But for now," Frank just laughed and stretched his arms to the moon. "He'll come back," he said confidently. "I felt him. We'll meet again. Oh man, I hope we're best friends next time." And with that, he returned inside, already glowing with the anticipation of the final match. The mystery of Sergei would have to wait, but it lingered like a phantom. dancing behind the streetlights of the arena, reminding everyone that the world still had room for magic. Match number 15. The air was too loud to breathe in. That's the best way to describe it. The kind of volume that climbs inside your lungs and shakes the ribcage. And as the fighters began their walk to the cathedral, for the sound wasn't just heard. It was lived. Every footstep was met with the thunderclap of boots, stomping bleachers, of fans slapping the rails, of chants overlapping in a chaotic symphony of madness. That's my loser, Toby. Toby. Make him bleed, 15, baby. Frank walked first because, of course, he did no robe. No glittering lights, no camera crew. Just Frank smiling like the world was his playground. And he'd just been handed a fresh bag of marbles. His lion's mane of hair bounced with every step, his feet bare against the polished, blood-stained marble of the chain-link cathedral's fighter corridor. He waved, he winked, he laughed. Someone threw a slice of pizza at him, and he thanked them. He passed a group of fans holding signs that read, "Failure is divine," and another one that simply said, "If Frank wins, we riot." And Frank, never one to waste a moment, cupped his hands to his mouth and shouted with glee. Get ready to riot, then the arena exploded. Frank was lying, obviously. But no one knew he was obviously going to lose this match. There were horns, blaring fireworks going off indoors. Vendors tossing free churros like parade confetti. Influencers live-streaming every breath. It wasn't just hype, it was hysteria. Holy hysteria, and right behind him, walking slower, more grounded, was Toby Alfred. His walk was composed, shoulders square, eyes locked forward. But even he couldn't suppress the twitch in his jaw, the almost imperceptible hesitation in his stride. Around him, the chants were different. "The Reaper is back, break the curse." "Send them to the floor, Toby." And despite the crowd rooting for his victory, there was something in the air that wasn't quite joy, not exactly. It was wild, yes, but it was the kind of wildness that came from nervous tension disguised as excitement. Because deep down, everyone had the same thought, festering in their subconscious. What if Frank wins because of Frank wins? Everything changes. Frank looked back at Toby during the walk just once and gave him the most gentle, elated, monstrous grin. A man with 499 losses could ever wear. And he mouthed thanks for being here. No one booed Frank, not really. They cheered for his loss. They worshipped his losing streak. But no one hated Frank. And he was glowing in it, absolutely beaming. He stopped right before the tunnel to the arena, looked up at the cathedral lights above, and said to no one in particular, "What a beautiful day to lose again." And then he stepped into the light. The feeling in the ring, round one begins. The bell hadn't even rung yet, and it felt like the sky had cracked open. The arena pulsed with living anticipation, like every light bulb in the cathedral had a heart, and every scream from the audience was just one more drum hit. In an invisible war march, the chain-link cathedral's concrete ring glistened under the spotlights, slick with the sweat of past titans and the blood of forgotten legends. The silence just before the opening round was so loud, it sounded like a scream being held underwater. Frank stood barefoot in his corner, hand loose, mouth guard half bitten, eyes sparkling with the signature cocktail of insanity. And innocence, his stance was casual, like a kid waiting in line at the DMV, humming to himself and rocking side to side, like the earth had no gravity, and he was just a balloon with a soul. Toby Alfred, by contrast, was still coiled precision carved from pain. His back was perfectly upright, his jaw locked, his fist closed so tight you could hear the leather stretch. He had the discipline of the monk and the rage of a prison riot, all stuffed into the same breathing body. And across from him, Frank. Toby blinked once, twice. Still couldn't believe he watched for weeks on loop. And grainy VHS and digital clips and slow-mo replays, was now bouncing like an idiot, with one arm and a toothy grin that belonged in a cartoon asylum. Dang, and then it started. Toby launched out the gate like a missile. Textbook karate blitz, no. 14 straight-line dash with a left-right. Hook-hook combination that has shattered ribs in sparring sessions and dropped grown men in the cage. Frank took off for dead on jaw. temple sternum. Floating rib, his head snapped with the blows, like a bobblehead doll on a washing machine, body whipping slightly with the motion. And he stumbled backwards with the grace of a drunk flamingo. But then, like some sin against biology, he straightened, rolled his shoulders, and grinned so wide it looked painted on. "Oh, that one tickled my pancreas." He giggled. Toby blinked another fury. A flurry of fury. Frank took it elbow to the clavicle, knee to the abdomen, a sharp, crested kick right to the meat of Frank's thigh. Frank giggled again. "You are so precise," he said mid-duck as another punch grazed his temple. "Like poetry with fist. Do you write haikus when you sleep?" Toby's eye twitched. Frank continued his Bugs Bunny taunting routine, bouncing backwards, sticking out his tongue, doing little jazz hands with his one good arm, like he was auditioning for the world's most unhinged musical. I call that last move the Alfred shimmy. "Can I steal it?" Toby's punches got faster, sloppier, harder, and Frank, his body always limp loose, shifting just enough with every strike, absorbed the blows. In the exact way a baby rolls off a mattress, without crying, total relaxation. It wasn't some elite tier invasion. He let himself get hit, just not damage. His shoulders would roll just right. His neck would angle at the last second. His knees would buckle into the impact. To disarm the force, every hit was an education. Frank was learning, and he was loving it. By the time the round ended, Frank had taken over 72 strikes, 15 clean shots to the torso, 12 strikes to the jaw, and a particularly spicy back fist to the nose. Made a noise like a wet slap on marble. The bell rang. Frank clapped by, slapping his arm against his numb. Round of applause for Toby, folks. He yelled, spinning around and bowing dramatically. Toby, chest heaving, veins bulging, teeth grinding, looked like he had just run through a forest fire. Fueled by regret, he stomped to his corner, growled to his trainer, "Why the hell am I so pissed off at this amputee?" His trainer stared, unsure how to answer, because that was the magic of Frank. The eternal loser, the unknockable fool. He made you feel like you were the problem. He danced with your rage and treated your trauma like a trampoline, and still he was smiling round one over. As the bell rang on the first round concluded, a collective sigh of relief echoed across the Chinley Cathedral, like a great weight being lifted off 1,000 corporate shoulders. The sponsors unclenched, the gamblers relaxed. The broadcasters started smiling again. "Ah, it's a normal Frank fight," some whispered behind the sound booth, and that whisper traveled like a secret prayer through the control rooms and executive lounges, all the way up to the owner's box. At the top of the cathedral, where a thin, balding man in a velvet suit unclenched his trembling martini glass, and finally took a sip because just for a minute, it had looked like Frank might be serious. He was smiling, taunting, getting pummeled like usual. Everything was exactly as it should be, and the stand's longtime fans leaned back in their seats, hot dog juice dripping from their chins. They laughed in delight. "There he is. Someone shared, that's my loser." The chant erupted again. Some fans wiped sweat from their brows. Others wiped from their eyes. Every single major sponsor, Apple, Adidas, Pizza Hut, Meta, Sony, and even Mr. Beast branded toothpaste, had bet big on the tradition continuing. The idea of Frank winning had threatened to topple the very balance of the arena's delicate marketing system. Because Frank wasn't just a man. He was the algorithm made fresh. The perfect product, always close, always thrilling, never victorious. Commentators laughed on their live stream. For a second there, I thought this guy was going to pull something crazy. But nope, good old Frank, soaking in punches like a stress ball. The viewer's peak viewership ever. 12 million concurrent on Me Too, 9 million on Rumble, 4 million pirated on sketchy stream sites. Hashtag trending Frank Fight 15. That's my loser Toby time, and you can't beat Frank if he wants to lose. The economy of spectacle is safe. Kobe looked furious. Frank looked radiant. And the arena thundered like a living, breathing organism, thrilled that the man who had terrified them with hope was back to being their beautiful, lovable disaster. Round 2. Is he give me your answer? The second bell cracked like thunder across the cathedral floor, and the moment it rang, Frank's eyes with narrowed. A joy so bright it almost looked blinding. He stepped forward, not sluggish, not soft, but smooth, rolling like water learning to walk. Toby launched the first strike, a hook fast, sharp, full of legacy. It crashed towards Frank's jaw like a meteor, aiming for the end of the world. But Frank tilted, not dodged. Not parried, tilted. His shoulders sagged, his knees bent, and the blow skimmed just a millimeter off his cheek, as if the air itself had caught the punch, instead. The crowd leaned forward. Something was off, something was different. Frank began to hum again, louder now, like a child remembering the lullaby in the middle of a battlefield. I'm half crazy. Toby lunged in with a spinning side kick, meant to cave in the ribs, but Frank turned with it, looping his own under his own arm. Underneath Toby's legs, gently gliding it to the ground, like a ballroom partner helping with the dip. This move looked like dancing. Only the floor cracked. Underneath the weight of the redirected strike, Toby pulled back, eyes wide. Frank smiled. It won't be a stylish marriage. Another hit came, a jab feint, followed by a brutal uppercut, meant to sever thought from bone. Toby's bread and butter combo. He used it to finish entire careers. Frank still humming, bent backwards at the waist, limp as the rope in. As a rope in the rain, and let the punch soar over him. He sprang back and whipped his arm round Toby's shoulder, catching him by the bicep. Not punching, not grappling, just guiding. Then slowly he lifted his palm to palm, until it looked like the two men were mid-walks, in the center of the god-forsaken ring of steel. But you'll look sweet upon the seat. Toby tried to tear away. He growled through elbows, kicks, backhands, but Frank's movements were surreal. Each hit was met with a counter not born from violence, but rhythm. He didn't just fight. He swayed. He didn't just react. He danced. He forced Toby to pivot. He locked his shoulder for a beat, spinning him like a record, and the crowd howled in laughter and all. They weren't watching a match anymore. They were watching a concert of combat, of a bicycle built for two. With the final hum, Frank ducked under Toby's guard and brushed his knuckles along Toby's ribs. Just hard enough to score a point, not to injure a humiliating technical point then. Another to the sternum, then a gentle slap that dropped Toby on his back, like a child lying down for a nap. Ding, end of round 2. The scoreboard blinked. Frank is in the lead. Toby sat up breathless, bruised and somehow smiling. What in the hell is going on? He whispered, a grin spreading over his sweat. Slick face, I think I might be falling in love with this fighting. Frank bit down, wiped sweat from his brow with his own. With his own bare shoulder, and laughed, not mockingly, but with delight. So am I, he said, eyes sparkling. So am I up in the corner? Demetri leaned forward. A lump in his throat. He's happier than usual. His voice muttered, voice low. Frank walking back to his corner, turning his head just lightly. Of course I am, he winked. This is my last loss ever. Demetri froze, his breath hitched. What? But Frank didn't answer. He just sat on his stool, crossing his legs like a monk in meditation, and whispered, the blood on his wrap. Let's make it beautiful. Round 3, the bell rang for round 3. And the entire cathedral seemed to lean forward. In unison, Toby's eyes were locked, feral, focused, burning. The smile was gone now. It wasn't personal. But something about Frank's happiness, his effortless absorption of violence, felt wrong. It didn't feel human. That made it dangerous. Frank stood from his store, like a preacher ready to give a sermon. Eyes half-lidded, jaw relaxed. One arm hanging like a coat on a rusty nail. And he walked forward with no guard. No stance, no defense. Just that same crooked smile, and a soft whistle under his breath. The crowd stirred, even the commentators hesitated. He's doing it again, one of them muttered. He's giving him the round. What they didn't know what no one truly ever understood, was that Frank never gave anything. He offered it, and Toby took the offer. He started with a low kick, a bone-snapping one meant to destabilize the base. Frank didn't block. He twisted his hips into it, just slightly, letting the femur take the brunt of the shifting. and shifting his knee at the moment of contact. So the shin didn't dig in. It looked like it landed clean. Hell, it sounded like a baseball bat breaking a tree branch. But Frank stepped forward. A liver hook boom, a rising elbow boom, a jab to the orbital flush. Frank absorbed them all. His head snapped back. His torso twisted, his lips bled, but his eyes stayed calm, more than calm. And the truth of it, the truth that Toby couldn't ignore. Was this Frank was dancing again? Only this time, he was dancing with pain. He wasn't evading anymore. He was molding his body into the violence, folding into the punches like clay around a fist. Every hit should have been catastrophic, but every strike found Frank already moving into it, already redirecting his force. He was a tide swallowing a raft. How is he still standing, Toby? Barked McCombs, sweat flinging from his brow. Fist flying like pistols. You're incredible, Frank said, stepping into a right cross, laying it crush into his cheek. Like a sledgehammer against water. Stop smiling, Toby yelled, slamming a knee into Frank's ribs. You pivot your hips beautifully, Frank replied, gasping gleefully. Toby was racking up points. The round was his, no doubt about it. He spun, he stomped. He cracked his elbow onto Frank's collarbone and felt a sharp pain in his own joint. He stepped back, breathing hard, realized Frank's body was shifting into every strike, not to avoid damage, but to mutate it, to twist it, to pass it through his joint, his bones, his skin, like a conductor passing lightning into the dirt. It hurt Frank. Of course it did. Of course it hurt. But pain was his language. Pain was his scripture, and the worst part, Toby's hands were starting to feel like they were breaking. Knuckles barked with pressure. His wrist ached. One punch landed so hard on Frank's forehead that Toby felt a crack in his own thumb. Frank didn't flinch. He only whispered, just loud enough to hear over the roar of the crowd. Thank you for every one of them. Toby stepped back, shook his arms out. He was winning this round, and yet he felt like he was standing in front of a tidal weight that had only just noticed him. Ding end of round 3. Toby roared. Toby's corner roared in celebration. Another room locked. Another round locked, another set of points. The judges scribble with certainty. The crowd scream with relief. The sponsors exhale. Toby looked at Frank as the one-armed man walked to his stool, face bruised but glowing with some unknowable joy. And he realized something horrifying. Frank hadn't thrown a single punch, and his hands were shaking and his chest was tight. And in his mind, a voice whispered, I don't think I want to go another round. Frank sat down, crossing his leg like a monk, and smiled at Demetri across the ring. He tapped his chest twice and whispered to no one in particular, We're almost there. Frank sat cross-legged on a stool, like he was meditating at the center of the sun, humming quietly and sipping from a water bottle. Through the side of his mouth, where his lip wasn't cut, Demetri stood in front of him, tall and thin, staring at him with an unreadable expression. Half worry, half worship. His hand shook only slightly, just enough for the bottle to tremble as he held out. Hey, buddy, Frank said, taking the towel and wiping himself like down. A man cleaning a prize painting. You feeling all right, Demetri Brinkme? Yeah, you, Frank replied, voice gentle and chipper, like they were chatting over breakfast. You've been coughing a little more. Sound like a busted trumpet. You sleeping enough? Demetri chuckled dryly. Kneeling beside him, Jesus Frank. You're the one getting turned into a punching bag by a karate gang boss, and you're asking me about my health. Frank gave a big crooked grin. Well, yeah, I mean, if you croak, who's gonna handle the sponsors? They don't like me, right? Remember, too unreasonable. Demetri smiled but didn't answer for a moment. He looked at Frank, really looked at him. The bruises on his face were already turning colors. His mouth was split. His one hand trembled slightly from nerve feedback, and still Frank looked like he just finished a spa day. I'm fine, Frank. Just tired stress does that, especially when your one-armed lunatic son might be planning something that will break the economy of the entire Bloodsport empire. Frank beamed, You think of me like your son. Don't push it, the bitch, he muttered, wiping sweat off of Frank's forehead. You're more like of a meat grinder. Learn how to hug. Frank laughed loudly, almost childlike. Best compliment I've ever gotten. Then his voice softened, but seriously. Thank you for everything after this. I just hope you're proud. Demetri hesitated, then patted his shoulder gently. Frank, I've been proud of you. Since you were the size of a rotisserie chicken and you tried to fight a pack of squirrels for a slice of pizza, I just don't know what comes next. And that scares me, Frank nodded slowly. Good. That means it'll be fun across the ring. Toby offered a sound and still was
Not
shaking.
from fatigue, not from pain,
But from pure, unfiltered confusion. He stared at Frank, blood-bruised. Bloody bruised, smiling like he was on a beast vacation.
and it broke something in his mind.
What the hell is wrong with him? He muttered, clenching his fist so tight.
His nails dug into his palms.
His trainer offered water, but he swatted it away. Why is he joking?
Why is he asking us about his coach?
Why is he hugging me between
What is this?
rounds?
What is going on?
His corner tried to calm him.
You're ahead, he's not winning.
Toby didn't blink. His eye twitched.
It doesn't feel like that,
He whispered. It feels like I'm being
Like
studied.
I'm on the frog on a table.
Like he's watching my soul unravel and taking notes. He looked up, just in time to see Frank blow a kiss at a bug, crawling on the floor of his corner. Toby clenched, Toby's jaw clenched, his mind fracturing. He had walked into the ring with the intent
To prove he was stronger than failure itself.
Now he wasn't so sure. Failure hasn't just outsmarted him. Round 4, the bell rang, and a strange stillness swept through the cathedral.
Frank stood calm, loose,
Grinning and rolled his neck in a wide, slow arc vertebrae cracking like old wood. He looked across the cage and saw it, the rage brewing in Toby's eyes.
Not anger, not frustration, rage.
The kind forged in urban war zones, the kind that screams through teeth clenched too long
And
fists trained too violently, Frank whispered under his breath. Here comes the storm, Toby launched like a torpedo. A low sweeping, roundhouse kick to the hip blocked a reverse elbow. Spinning like a turbine,
Ducked a chain with 3 lightning-fast jabs,
and a knife hand strike to the clavicle deflected. Redirected, dismissed. But Frank wasn't winning, no.
he was letting it happen.
He bent like reed grass. He slipped, he swayed. And letting Toby's fist grace, just enough to rack up the score
Without ever doing real harm.
Each impact was a breadcrumb trail, leading to something beautiful and awful, and Toby was falling for it. Because Toby wasn't just attacking, he was unleashing, He roared, stomping the floor like a taiko drum. As he performed a forbidden kata, something ancient on a smoking when his master once called Mugen Imbu, the dance of infinite rage. Every movement, shredded tendons pop. Blood vessels in his eyes turn muscle to fire. He didn't care. He was channeling everything. His guilt, his regret, his redemption arc, all of it. The only language he knew, destruction. Frank twirled away from an axe that shook the arena floor. He spun into a gentle back fist that tapped Toby's ear. Just enough to score, but not enough to daze. He dropped into a squat, sweeping Toby's leg without knocking him down, only forcing balance correction. Toby countered with a leaping upward blow, the kind that ends careers. Frank stepped into it, absorbing the hip with a twist of his neck and a limp shoulder, turning what should have been broken bone into a glancing touch of victory. Frank never took control. He never dominated. He never sought victory, but he danced in the fire. Every move Toby made, Frank answered. Not to win, to witness, to record, to feel. Toby's ribs cracked after a high-speed backflip kick. Landed awkwardly, his wrist began to swell after he punched through Frank's guard and caught his elbow on the rebound. Blood streamed down his forehead. And still he screamed, "Why won't you fall?" Frank, giggling, spun on one foot like a ballerina. Because you're too fun, who falls during a party. That's a party foul, dude. Bama triple knee Barashka liver. Frank Wees took it bowed like a gentleman. Crack a downward chop to the collarbone. Frank stepped into it and whispered, "Thank you, Squish Thread." Toby's final move, a full-body spinning dragon kick. Aimed at the temple, Frank ducked. Barely the wind kissed his hair. He popped back up, tapped Toby's cheek with an open
in the
palm.
ear one more round.
The bell rang. Toby stumbled back, shoulders heavy, lungs crying. Frank looked like he had just gotten off a roller coaster.
A few bruises, sure.
A smudge of blood, but his eyes crystal serene, unholy. And then came the score. Toby wins round 4 by 1 point. Exactly 1. Frank threw his head back and howled with glee, spinning in place like a child on sugar high. Toby stood there drenched in sweat and blood, smiling. "You're not human." He gasped. Frank wiggled his eyebrows, correct. "I'm Frank, round 5. The bell rang like a death toll, echoing through the cathedral. With the finality of a guillotine drop, there was no humor in Frank's face anymore. No jokes, no whistles. No dancing, no chaos. Just the quiet smile of a man completely possessed by clarity. It was the grin. It was a grin not of madness, but of purpose. The look of a soul who had learned every scar by name and memorized every tendon in the hands that once beat him. Across from him, Toby's hands trembled, and his vision pulsed like a heartbeat heard underwater. His breath came in ragged notes, not from exhaustion, but from something worse, dread. He had to break Frank. He had to... Not to win, not to score, but to prove something to the world, to the ghost in his bloodstream, and to the voice in his head that whispered, "Even legends bleed." Toby screamed from a place far beneath his lungs and charged forward, like a man escaping a burning house. A straight punch, Frank. Wasn't there a roundhouse? Frank ducked under a motion smooth like poured oil. A spinning heel kick. Frank slipped past it like a ghost through a wall. No tension in his body, no hesitation in his eyes. Just stillness, and truth. Toby snarled, pivoted his foot, and hurled his full weight into a wild haymaker that should have shattered ribs and split jaws. But Frank moved not with the block, not with the dodge, with something deeper, something spiritual, a ripple, a bend in reality. His body curved at the last possible moment, like light reflecting off water. And Toby's punch hit nothing but air and regret, and then in a whisper too soft for the judges, but loud enough for Toby's collapsing soul. Frank murmured, "You taught me that." The next second belonged to Frank Pop. A jab to the nose, not enough to break it, just enough to blur the eyes and the rattling in its cradle crack. A liver shot that made Toby's knees forget their job and buckle beneath him like snap stilts. A spinning back elbow to the jaw, but not with full rage, just enough to guide the pain. Like a musician bringing a cello to tears. Toby tried to fire back swinging, roaring, throwing every fragment of memory and technique, like a man trying to swim out of grief. But Frank was gone before the attack existed. He wasn't dodging, he was erasing every thought Toby had before he was born. Frank stepped forward. Hips rolled like a predator in water, drifting like rivers slicing through ancient stone. Each counter was surgical. A parry here, a sweep there. A knee to the inner thigh, an elbow to the shoulder blade, a slap to the ear not to harm, but to throw the equilibrium into a blender. Frank wasn't just fighting anymore. He was unraveling. Every move Toby had spent his life perfecting, Frank gave back sharper, finer, gentler, in the most terrifying way possible. "You taught me how to breathe," Frank said, ducking under a wild punch and jabbing today's Toby's solar plexus with precision. "You taught me distance," he added, sweeping Toby's foot with a graceful pivot that made the older fighter stumble like a fawn. "You taught me rage," he whispered, twisting into a perfect back fist that cracked Toby's ribs with poetic timing. "And now I'll give it all back." He smiled as a rising knee soared towards Toby's chin, stopping just short like mercy, refusing to land the final word. The arena was silent, not bored, not confused, awestruck, because Frank wasn't humiliating his opponent. He wasn't mocking. He wasn't punishing. He was thanking. Each blow was a sentence, each strike a syllable. A gentle, brutal love letter to everything he had ever endured. "Thank you for teaching me pain. Thank you for hating me. Thank you for being the one I needed." Toby's body kept swinging, flinching, trying to remember what it meant to be a fighter. But his mind shattered like glass under thunder. And the space between each impact, he saw visions, his old gang tattoos, his brother's overdose, the quiet sobs in the rehab, the smell of the dojo floor, his master's funeral, the birth of his son, his tiny fingers grabbing his thumb. And now Frank, just Frank, standing in front of him smiling, like a beast that had finally learned what it was like. What it finally learned what it was born to be. The bell rang round 5 over. Toby dropped to his knees, not because of pain, because something worse. Understanding, Frank had danced through the fire for 1,499 fights. And now, he's used every one of those burns to forge perfection. A blade tempered in agony, honed in failure, sharpened by love. Frank won round 5 unanimously. A masterclass, but by total points. Toby still won the fight, and the chain-link Cathedral exploded into ecstasy. "That's my loser! That's my loser!" The chant rose like a tide of holy fire, thundering through steel beams and blood-stained walls as fireworks rained down the arena skybox. The judges lifted Toby's limp arm into the air, but Frank stepped forward and raised it higher. He lifted the man who had nearly broken trying to break him. His smile was soft, his eyes glassy with tears. And into the mic, Frank whispered the next prophecy. Ladies and gentlemen, my 1/500 teacher. Toby wept. The crowd screamed. Demetri sat down, clutching his heart. Laughing and crying, and the sponsors. The world, the media, they were all terrified. Because the era of losing was over. And Frank was finally ready to win. Frank's post-fight speech. The crowd was roaring, absolutely unhinged, as if reality itself were unraveling. With the sound cameras flash, like a million memories being born at once, searing into time the image of Toby on his knees, head bowed, breath stuttering, tears mixed with blood and sweat. In a cocktail of exhausted grace, commentators tried to speak, but words failed them. No metaphors could capture what they had just seen. There was no language strong enough. Only silence and screaming coexisted, and above Toby stood Frank, his one hand resting gently on his opponent's shoulder, not like a conqueror, but like a friend saying goodbye. He then raised his arm, not in a gesture of triumph, but of transformation. A microphone was passed to him like a torch, and as he gripped it, the entire cathedral fell into a hush so absolute. It felt like the world paused to listen. Frank smiled, but it wasn't with his usual grin. It was solemn. Deep, the kind of smile someone wears after burying their past and planting something new in the dirt. He looked out in the endless sea of faces. The losers, the beautiful, the millions chanting his name, wearing his shirts, holding up signs, sobbing into each other's arms, like they were at a funeral and a coronation, all at once. Well, he said, voice soft, steady, shaking just a little. I guess that makes 15. He let the silence sit after that. Let it breathe. Let the number hit them. 1/500 losses. 1/500 lessons. 500 lives lived in a ring of fire. Then, with eyes scanning the crowd, he spoke again, slower this time. I want to talk to all of you. To the losers in the crowd. To the freaks. The failures, the forgotten ones. The ones who watched me lose again and again and found something holy in it. Something happened then, something unexplainable. The camera panned across the audience. And it wasn't just a crowd anymore. It was a cathedral of the broken. People were weeping. People were praying. People were gripping like shipwreck survivors. Some held signs that read, "Love lost with Frank and loser for life." A young girl held a cardboard sign with crayon letters. Frank taught me how to stand. It said, I love you. He said, voice cracking for the first time. I love all of you. And for 1/500 fights, I gave you mine. He began to pace now slowly, almost like a preacher walking among pews. The spotlight followed the camera, never cut away. His voice deepened, not with volume, but with conviction, with truth. It wasn't the voice of a man still searching. It was the voice of a man who found what he was born to say. I told you I'd never win. That losing was the only thing I was good at. But the truth is, losing is just the start. Losing isn't about staying down. Losing is learning. Losing is grace. Losing is becoming. He paused, looking down at his own sacred fist, as if there were gospel staring at the microphone, the fist in a combination. And through every fight, every broken rib, every snapped tendon and bloody mat, I was building something. He turned slowly and stared directly into the main camera, into the homes of every child, every ex-con, every outcast, what clung to his fights like lifelines. And now I've built it. He raised his fist in victory. Well, not in victory, but in declaration, a simple, powerful gesture. The loser is no more. Gas rippled through the crowd, like wind through dry leaves. Even the announcers were stunned into silence. No one moved, no one breathed. The arena held itself still, like a child hearing its first bedtime story of truth. I have learned everything I can from defeat. Frank continued, I have fought legends. I have been buried in pain. I have seen every technique, every style, every possible path to destruction. And I took them all in. He looked back at Toby, who was staring up at him like a man reborn, eyes wide with disbelief and awe. You called me weak, Frank said gently, but I wasn't losing. I was recording Toby's soldiers sank. Not from shame, but from release. From understanding, from the undeniable, crushing realization that Frank hadn't just been surviving. He had been studying, and now Frank's voice was calm. Almost excited, I begin the long, fun process of winning forever. The crowd erupted not in confusion, but in shock and joy. In revolution, the chant started again, but this time it felt different. Bigger. It was no longer about cheering for a loser. It was about welcoming a king. But I don't want glory. I don't want money, Frank said, waving his hand at the blinking neon sponsor signs above. I want balance. I want justice. I want to take this godforsaken arena built on blood, greed, and agony, and I want to level it. He gestured wide now, pointing to the chain-link fences, the broken lights, the corporate banners, the luxury boxes filled with executives and influencers. And smiling devils, this place turned pain into profit. Turned fighters into livestock. They bet on me to lose, and I gave them 1,500 reasons to smile. Then after a long pause, the grin returned, but this grin was new. Not goofy, not playful. It was a weapon, a blade, a flag, but now, he said, eyes burning, I'm going to ruin this place. Chaos rippled through the VIP sections. Promoters in the skyboxes went pale. Phones lit up, security guards looked on shore, of whether to panic or applaud. Frank didn't care, his eyes were on the future. I want to challenge every single one. Of the 101 who beat me, he said clearly. All of them, I want one last dance. With every last person who walked away with my blood on their gloves. He pointed at the crowd as if naming the plagues. The sins, the bones. I'm calling it the final 101 battles of the chain-link Cathedral. And then slowly, like luring a Bali in a holy ground, he lifted Toby to his feet. There was no rush, no dominance. Just care, just love. And when I'm done, there will be no more top or bottom. No gods, no monsters. Only equals. He looked at Toby again. Truly looked at him, and Toby trembled. Not with fear, with recognition. He finally understood who Frank was. What Frank was, why Frank had to lose. No more throwing people away because they failed. Frank whispered, no more building idols out of violence. I've taken the pain of everyone, every punch, every insult, every loss, so you don't have to. He stepped back now, looking around one last time. So committing the entire arena to memory, and then he said the words that broke everything. I'm not here to win titles. I'm here to destroy the lie this place was built on. And I'll do it as the man who lost 1,500 times. To show you what it really means to win. The crowd wasn't just cheering anymore. They were weeping, writing, praying, screaming, loving. The emotions were molten, everyone on their feet, everyone losing their mind. And Frank stood in the center of it all. Calm as a saint, smiling like the wolf. I'm Frank, he said. The loser, and I'm here to set you all free. We open on the flicker of a screen. Granny handheld shaking slightly, as a streamer stares directly into his webcam, eyes wide and face pale, beneath the harsh fluorescence of a janitor's closet. His mop leans behind him like a forgotten spear. The camera's resolution is just good enough to pick up the embroidered patch on his hoodie. Team Frank, that's my loser. He adjusts his headset with trembling fingers, guys. What does this mean? His voice cracks, not out of fear, but from identity collapse. His entire brand, every video, every late-night rant and bathroom break live stream was built around Frank, the man who lost with such beautiful defiance. It felt like winning, and now Frank said he wasn't a loser anymore. He had declared war on the entire Cathedral. He had become something else. Something more. The streamer chat scrolled violently. Emojis drown out reason. The viewer count ticks upward. 308,002,000. No one knows what to believe. In another corner of the digital hive, a TikTok plays on loop, grainy footage of a young mother holding a toddler in a losers don't fold beanie, shaking her head in disbelief. I don't care if he's winning now, she whispers, blinking back tears. I lost my favorite loser. The algorithm eats it alive. Frank's was U.S. trends in 4 countries. Video spill and from every corner of the net memes. Breakdowns, reaction compilations. Some post-AI deepfakes of Frank losing again, just to feel something familiar. Meanwhile, in the feverish corners of the dark net, the conspiracy forums catch fire. A masked YouTuber called ChainTrue77 goes live with a manifesto. It's all a ruse, classic Demetri move. Get everyone to bet against Frank. Let him win a few, then rake in the winnings. Don't fall for it, stay sharp. Stay up another threat. Claims Frank has been replaced by a military engineer clone, referencing odd camera flickers. In his last 3 matches, a popular VR sleuth accuses North Korea. One Discord server insists Frank is actually dead, and what we saw was his AI soul achieving sentience. But beyond the noise, far from the screens, in a boardroom of reinforced concrete and mirrored glass deep within the CLC tower, a group of CEOs sit in silence. Not out of fear, Frank, but because know exactly what this means. You see, while Frank was their golden dog of the Central Division, the poster boy for underdog loyalty and eternal resilience, he was never their backbone. To be quite honest with you, that belonged to another entity entirely. The 101st. The chain-link cathedral wasn't built on underdogs. It was built on gods, let me explain. There are 3 divisions in the chain-link's monstrous hierarchy. At the base lies the junior division, a terrifying but beloved stage, where child fighters are raised on survival instinct and parental ambition bloody horrifying, but only 5% of total revenue. Then comes the central division, the realm of streaming deals. Personality-driven fighters, fan favorites, viral stars, and chaotic influencers. Frank dominated there not with victory, but with philosophy. He was the hellhound of Centra, the icon of the loser ideal. And Centra accounted for a sizable 30% of total CLC wealth. But the lion's share, well, it belonged to G-Rank. G-Rank is the monster chamber, home of the 101st, the most skilled, horrifying, brutal fighters ever witnessed by mankind. These warriors do not speak to cameras. They do not stream. They do not tweet. Each one is its own mytho. Some of them never remove their helmets ever. Some of them are rumored to have ended wars with a single bout. Others are so dangerous they have to be chemically sedated between rounds. And they rarely, if ever, fight outside their tier. They duel amongst themselves, gladiators on Mount Olympus, dragging in 65% of the CLC's entire profits, with just whispers of potential matchups. Now Frank, the boy from the boxing gym dumpster, the human punching bag turned poet a poem, has declared war on G-Rank itself. And that wasn't just an escalation, that was a tectonic shift. Frank's aim was not to test himself, not to win belts, not to prove anything. His plan, as the meat you confirm with a smirk in a back alley interview, was to destroy the very concept of hierarchy. He would fight as fast as possible, ruin his opponent's entire psychology, leave behind not just broken bodies, but broken legacies, and do it all with the same inhuman healing speed that made him such a terrifying enigma. The CEOs feared not for the loss of Frank, but for the ripple effects of his actions would cause. If the losers could climb into the heavens and start slaying gods, then what does that mean for the rest of the system? What does that mean for the junior division, for the entire marketing machine, for the entire economy that grew around control? This wasn't just a new story arc. This was the beginning of a spiritual coup. And in a place like the Chenli Cathedral, where blood was worship and narrative currency, Frank had just become something far worse than dangerous. He had become undeniable. The sun peeled itself over a jagged skyline, like butter melting across the slate roof of Demetri's estate, a massive cliffside manor that looked like someone had asked a Victorian architect to design a villain's hideout, then gave it to a billion-dollar budget and wine cellar. Out of A and on the Marvel courtyard, Frank and Branko moved like 2 old shadows. sparring for the joy of muscle memory. Branco always in a half uniform, half pajama looked like he wore before breakfast. Circled low and muttered with gravel in his throat. "Again, champion," Branco said, bouncing lightly. His face were his face, wearing a grin like a boxer's mouthguard. Frank grinned back with a single canine glinting champion me. "Branco, the only belts I got are the ones holding up my sweatpants. You ever see a man lose 100 times and still come home to dinner? That's actually my title, domestic disappointment." First of his name, Branco lunged, and Frank dipped low, with a swagger of a cartoon trickster, his bare feet silent on the stone, his body twitching and twisting, like a rubber band in God's slingshot. The left arm of his, the one with 3 joints, unfurled like a viper coiling mid-air, first fainting high, then folding mid-punch, and snapping sideways in the Branco's rib. With a dull pop, Branco wheezed, clutched his side, and stumbled with a laughter. "Your arm is cursed," Brinkle said, breathless, laughing. "A serpent, a sin champion. I swear it bends like no man should. Frank winks it bends like a tax law baby." They tussled a few more rounds, laughter mingling with light bruises, before clapping hands and heading towards the guest house. Frank strolled under Elise's flower arch, like a court jester on a honeymoon. The guest house, tucked to the side of the estate, had the comforting silence of an overfunded dojo. The walls were pale, the beams were dark, and everything hummed with wealth. That tried really hard to pretend it was humble. Artifacts lined the walls. Katana from wars nobody remembered. Mask from rituals nobody performed, and enough books to start a monastery. Frank slid into the velvet-trimmed barber room, where Thomas stood like a statue. Next to the chair, he was dressed in all black as usual. His face neutral, his presence soundless. The air smelled like cedar and wet steel. Frank sat with a hop. "I'm trending." "Tomano." 6 on chain. Buzz, even the haters are confused. It's like I gave the internet a concussion. He leaned his head back. "You proud of me?" Silent Prince Toma said nothing. As always, but the scissors moved with loving precision. They made no sound, not a click, not a snip. Frank's hair, wild as always, looked exactly the same when it was over. "You did it again," Frank said, standing. "I've never looked more me." Thomas gave a slow nod that felt like it had centuries behind it. Dinner came soon after, and Rosie had not just cooked a meal, she had conjured an edible opera. The dining hall was soaked in golden firelight, the chandelier dripping with crystal vines. The table looked like it had been set by a fever dream. Frank arrived still barefoot, dragging a silk robe, and smelling faintly of lavender and blood. Franco sat near the middle, already chewing on something glistening. Sonia sat 2 seats down, wearing her nurse's jacket like armor, her expression equal parts exhaustion and affection. Lester was flicking peas into his wine. Giggling Toma had already taken his place, perfectly upright, and Elise, dirt still under her nails, stood like a commander about to announce war. "This is not dinner," Elise said. "This is resurrection," she begins with her voice low. The first course, butter-poached octopus on squid ink brioche, garnished with saffron cream, edible gold flakes, and pomegranate seed, meant to invoke the ocean's depths, from which all fighter spirits crawl. The table murmured approval. Frank clapped lightly with one hand, much like this second. She continued as a chilled plum with goat cheese sphere, encased in a gelatin dome, flavored with hibiscus and rum, served on crushed ices, mined from the sacred glaciers of God's biceps. "Where's that?" Frank asked, eyes wide, metaphorically Antarctica. Elise replied, "Next came soup fire. Roasted marrow and mushroom consommé with roasted garlic foam, poured over a single basil leaf, and a pearl of smoked duck fat that burst on the tongue like a spell." Frank leaned over to Branco. "I don't know what's happening, but I want to marry this soup." The main course was an entire slow-roasted boar, liqueured with apricot glaze, and peppered with shards of caramelized sage. It had been stuffed with wild rice, chanterelle mushrooms, and candied walnuts. Around it, slices of lavender-crusted lamb, buttered quail, duck's heart on dark's hearts on rosemary skewers. and an entire roasted swan coated in mustard. Maple reductions. Vegetables surrounded them in floral mandalas. Rainbow carrots glazed in honey. Black radishes carved into roses. Potatoes folded into origami swans. Pickled fennel sculpted into dragon wings. A river of sauce boats zigzagged across the table. Red wine demi-glacé. Garlic aioli spice mango chutney. Mint yogurt, truffle butter, horseradish blood jelly. Then came the breads. 33 types, from Persian flatbread to Guinness-soaked rye, all served warm with bricks of compound butter that looked like polished marble. Frank stacked his plate like a man about to be executed. He hummed while chewing. "Oh, this is sin," he said with his mouth full. "Put me in jail right now." Rosie brought dessert, even though Elise had originally declared there would be none. "We changed our minds," she said, "because he earned it." The dessert was a literal chain-link cathedral, made out of spun sugar and dark chocolate, with candied orange stained glass windows and a molten cinnamon whiskey core that oozed when cracked. Frank Dreams screamed like a man who saw God in a donut. Meanwhile, Demetri sat at the far end of the table, untouched plate before him, hands clenched in his lap. His skin had grown 2 shades paler than usual, and the wrinkles around his eyes looked like they had been carved in salt. He stared at Frank, eating, laughing, glowing, and felt the universe shift beneath the floorboards. If Frank really went through with this, if he really stormed Dream Rank, if he beat even one of the 101st, if he made good on that smile, then the Chandley Cathedral would collapse, and the world would never be the same again. And worst of all, Demetri knew he would still love him for it.